Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners. Audience members, I want to start by asking you to please silence your electronic devices. I would also like to remind you that in addition to the audience in this room, we have people watching and listening online, so please consider your language in comments and testimony today. Today's meeting is a hybrid board meeting. Some presenters and guests will appear in person and some will appear virtually. For those presenting virtually, please mute your mic when not speaking, and when presenting, make sure to unmute your mic and turn on your camera. For those joining us in person, to present or to provide public testimony, please turn your mic on when you begin speaking and off when you've completed your remarks. For all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions. May I have a motion on the consent calendar?
So moved. Second.
Commissioner Brim Edwards moves. Commissioner Singleton seconds. Approval of the consent calendar. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, the consent calendar is approved.
Opportunity for public comment on non-agenda matters. This is a time for the board to hear public testimony, not for board deliberation. When it's your turn to speak, I will call your name and unmute you or call you to the presenter's table. I will set a timer for 3 minutes. When you begin speaking, announce when your time is up, at which point please wrap up your sentence. We have 7 people signed up for verbal testimony. Our first group is going to be Paige Baumgartner, Sophie Abasan, Anna Aziz Khani, and Janice Thien.
Hi, my name is Paige, and I'm here to talk about Multnomah County Animal Services. Freckle was a 9-week-old puppy who was found on August 3rd, 2025. The finder wanted to adopt Freckles if an owner was not found. On intake, she had bloody diarrhea. She was seen by a vet technician who tested her for parvo. Although it was negative, she was on parvo watch due to age. She was still alert and responsive. Over 24 hours later, she was finally seen by the vet. By that point, she had noticeably declined, being too weak to walk, moderately dehydrated with sunken eyes. She was no longer alert or responsive. She had bloody diarrhea with sunken eyes. She had bloody diarrhea and was vomiting yellowish foam. The vet prescribed some medications and recommended transfer to a rescue. She sat in the shelter overnight. The next morning, on August 5th, she seemed to be doing better and was assessed to have severe gastroenteritis. The shelter was still seeking transfer to a rescue. On the morning of August 6th, she had liquid yellow stool with a small amount of blood, but was more alert, sitting upright, had intermittent tail wagging, and her temperature was normal. By that evening, she was weak and her temperature had dropped dangerously low. Freckles was euthanized on August 6th, 2025. When would it have been appropriate to transfer Freckles to Dove Lewis? If she was transferred to an emergency hospital within those first few hours, could she now be a happy puppy playing in her new adopted home? Dolly's Fund is a restricted use donation-based account. According to the donations policies and procedures, documented date July 27, 2023, Dolly's Fund will be dedicated to addressing the health needs of animals in the care of MCAS. MCAS was ready to pass her on to a rescue to be responsible for her medical care, but not willing to pay for her treatment using Dolly's funds. As of the date that Freckles dies, the balance in Dolly's Fund was more than $692,000. We did a public records request for Dolly's Fund expenses for fiscal year 2026. There are discrepancies between what we were given and what is reported on the monthly reports as MCAS's website. While we don't know what those discrepancies portray, we were able to see that $589.59 was used as a payroll payment for a vet tech on July 15th, 2025. Unless that was something that the commissioners gave permission for or meets other criteria that we are not aware of, we believe this is a misuse of Dolly's Fund. Why won't MCAS use those donations to help dogs like Freckles? Velma was a 50-pound 2-year-old Rottweiler mix. She came into the shelter on March 3rd, 2025 on a protective custody hold. She was observed to have cherry eye in both eyes and a missing significant portion of her top teeth. MCAS learned that Velma previously had diseased teeth pulled at OHS, but they were unable to pull 2 teeth and recommended dental specialists. At MCAS, one of those teeth was causing an abscess, and on May 19th, And on May 19th, they sent Velma to specialists who estimated her treatment to be $3,000 to $4,000. They never did that procedure. For the first few months, all of Velma's behavior notes were positive, with descriptions such as wiggly body, doing tippy taps, responsive to vocal direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, my name is Sophie, and I'm going to continue with Velma. On May 29th, Velma had a hind left leg limp, which was suspected to be a possible knee ligament tear. She was put on activity restriction for about 3 months. On June 22nd, she was introduced as a potential male foster and his young child. Coming out of the kennel, Velma was described as wiggly and loose with a wagging tail until she approached the foster and child, when she retreated back, hiding behind a staff member and barking. This continued until they left. Then the female partner came in. Velma hesitantly approached her, sniffed, then immediately laid down next to her, with a loose, wiggly body and readily accepted pets all over. When the male foster came back with treats, Velma slowly started to warm up to him. The child then came to the other side of the gate, and Velma continually barked at the child. She was returned to her kennel without incident. On August 5th, another foster came to meet her. Again, she was barking and hesitant, but was slowly warming up. When 2 techs that Velma knew came in, she was very affectionate and seemed calmer with the foster, but after some time started barking again. She was returned to her kennel without incident. A trainer would have been equipped to successfully navigate both of these situations so that it led to positive outcomes. They could have been training opportunities for Velma instead of reinforcing a negative behavior and becoming strikes against her because she was scared. On September 3rd, MCAS gained ownership of Velma and started seeking transfer options. On September 5th, a staff member wrote, "Velma is a sweet baby angel. She just wants to snuggle on your lap and give you lots and lots of kisses. She has been jumpy/gumming in the kennel with staff she is very close with, but this is most likely due to kennel frustration caused by her length of stay and excitement at getting out of the kennel." On September 12th, Rounds recommended following up on transfer options. On September 18th, Rounds recommended euthanasia due to multiple medical concerns in addition to behavioral challenges with no interest from transfer partners. Velma was killed on September 19th, 2025. She was seized by the county because they believed MCAS would take better care of her. By the time of her death, MCAS had over $696,000 in Dolly's Fund to take care of any medical needs. They can also have trainers to train staff, volunteers, and fosters to help a dog overcome fear when put in unfamiliar situations.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, my name is Anna. I was very happy to see that a few weeks ago MCAS put out a call for fosters. I was disappointed to read that under their urgent foster requests, they wrote, "Behavioral dog support. Some dogs need a little extra TLC and training to help them overcome jumpy, mouthy behaviors and manage fear, anxiety, and stress." Why is MCAS asking fosters to help with training and overcoming dog behaviors? I spoke with a trainer and a behaviorist, both who were contracted with MCAS around 10 years ago. They loved the work they did there, saying that overall they saw positive outcomes with the dogs. They are still there and willing to help. We have no shortage of trainers here in Portland. Instead of asking volunteers who are untrained to train dogs, MCAS should have an internal system of trainers and medical behaviorists. This system would set the dog and the foster up for success and help staff feel more comfortable and reduce around big dogs and help reduce risk. I'm going to tell you about Meatball. Meatball was a 70-pound, 7-year-old Rottweiler. He had been at the shelter since March. His medical notes indicate some handling sensitivity in a medical setting, which is to be expected. His notes from walks are all positive, describing him as having a loose body, soliciting pets, excellent leash manners, etc. He was a volunteer favorite, described as loving, playful, and always ready to show off his toys. On 8/30, he was found with vomit in his kennel and difficulty standing or sitting up. On 9/3, it was written that for the second time that week, he had vomit in his kennel and would not get up. By 9/5, he had developed a hot spot on his left hip, probably from not getting up. On 9/27, the notes say multiple reports of vomiting dating back to 9/23. On 10/5, the notes say vomit with undigested food almost daily, thick greenish eye discharge, runny and mucousy poop that looks like jello and blood. Finally, on 10/7, 38 days after the first documented account of vomiting and lethargy, he was seen by the vet. On 10/11, 4 days later, he finally got x-rays and blood work. On 10/14, volunteers noted more vomiting and lethargy. On 10/15, the labs came back as unremarkable. A GI panel and ultrasound were recommended for further diagnosis. Those were not done. On 10/16, rounds recommended euthanasia due to severe illness beyond shelter's ability to treat. Meatball was killed on 10/17/2025. Meatball was a big dog that was misunderstood both behaviorally and medically. A medical director and a behaviorist would have helped Meatball and fulfilled MCAS's mission of protecting people and pets. Transferring him to Dove Lewis could have saved his life. Instead of languishing in the shelter for 49 days, he should have gotten the care and attention he needed earlier. As of 10/16, the day before that he was killed, the balance in Dolly's fund was $703,347. What are they saving that money for?
Thank you.
Next is Janice, and she's online. Janice, you can unmute yourself and begin.
Madam Chair, just while we're waiting, I would ask that we get just information from MCAS in response to the issues that have been raised this morning.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Margaret's actually already sent me a chart of them, the spend down of the different funds, so we'll make sure that gets shared with the board as well as other things.
She's back. Oh. It looks like I'm not able to get like a microphone function from Janice. So perhaps we can come back to her.
Unfortunately, it's not.
Okay, I'm going to have, thank you. Next up, sorry, let me.
I don't know, are you saying that she can't just hand out the testimony? I mean,
She can provide written testimony, yes. You can submit it to the clerk and then she'll
and
share
then we
it.
can all get it. Thank you.
But each person only gets 3 minutes.
Next, we have injured and pissed off, Deanne Salazar, and lightning.
My name's injured and pissed off. In 16 days, it'll be 15 years that I've had injuries to my spinal cord, and I had a broken hip at the same time. And then I got mistreated at the hospital, ignoring the spinal cord injuries. They were standing me up, and all I could do was throw up. And finally, after 3 days, they admitted that I had 2 fractures to my spinal cord, the T12 and L1. They're in sequence. They control the arms and the legs. And also, they admitted 2 years ago that I had scoliosis. My spine had been twisted from the hip surgery. They twisted it 12 degrees, and they also damaged my horseshoe kidneys as well. And like most spinal cord injury people, it's the CDC says it's a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, chronic pain. Currently, I'm at the Banfield Studios on 3800 and Sandy, which is a vast improvement from being homeless. Still, I haven't had any medical appointments or anything like that, and I pointed out to a worker yesterday that I had blood all over my pillows in the bed from the cancer that apparently I have had for the last year. It started with the ear, and that's documented by OHSU, and then with the shoulder, that even the Adult and Protective Services thought that I'd injured myself, which is clearly a fabrication of more of their crap. And of course, I reported the Protective Services to the Portland Police about their shenanigans. And even the court that evicted me, the Multnomah County Court, the judge read the paper that I'd signed, and I told her that I was blind. They told me just to sign it. She read it, asked me if I'd signed it, and I didn't answer her. And
Thank you. Your
so
time's
I was
up.
evicted.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners, for this opportunity. I'm Dean Salazar, an East Portland resident, Hazelwood Neighborhood Association board member, and too many state and local commissions to list. I'm speaking today to inform you about the House District 48 appointment process, specifically a potential residency issue for a candidate. According to voter registration records I received a few days ago, which I have provided to the Secretary of State's office, candidate Lamar Wise registered his address in the district in June and July. Previously, his residency was listed as being in Hillsborough. He has flipped between the districts a couple times, including when he pursued an appointment in a Western State House district. This is a serious concern in regards to democracy. This geographic opportunism does not represent the district, and he has not been involved in district issues. Is it too much to ask that the person who replaces Hua Win actually consistently was involved beforehand? That does not reflect well on our legacy or commitment to the district. That is why I urge you today and officially endorse Terrence Hayes for this seat. He genuinely understands the community's needs, is able to represent multiple communities and their interests, like African Americans, small businesses, and is the strongest candidate for re-election next year. I have much more positive as to why he should be the appointee when the appointment process occurs, but time is short. Thank you for considering these points.
Thank you.
I'm going to try Janice one more time while Lightning makes his way up here. Janice, can you unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I couldn't get it to work. I'm so sorry.
Okay, your time
Are you
starts now,
ready for
Janice.
me?
Yes.
Okay, good morning. I'm here to talk about Meatball, to continue with his story. I was going to read the emails between me and Director Aaron Grayhack, but they were longer than 3 minutes. I did email you all copies of them this morning, and I hope you'll read them. To summarize, Meatball, a dog that you've heard about and placed in protective custody in March, was first reported to be ill on 8/30. Reported symptoms were vomiting, not eating, lethargy. And as you've heard, he was euthanized on 10/17 due to, quote, severe illness beyond the shelter's ability to treat, unquote. MCAS still had not determined the cause of his illness. I emailed Ms. Grayhack on 10/14, almost 6 weeks from when he was first reported to be ill, begging her to transfer Meatball to an emergency medical animal hospital like Dove Lewis, where they actually have a lab for quick results, a bed to rest in away from loud noise, and under 24-hour supervision. I asked that Dolly's fund be utilized as it was intended, to provide medical care for dogs from MCAS whose medical needs were beyond the shelter's ability to treat. Ms. Grayhack responded that he was on rounds review, which is often the first step towards euthanasia, the next morning. She also stated that he had handling sensitivities that posed a risk to staff, So invasive treatment and diagnostics required sedation, and repeated sedation posed risk. I replied by stating that most dogs that are injured, in pain, and ill have handling sensitivities. Emergency animal hospitals have staff trained to deal with large dogs in these conditions. I told her that I had walked Meatball numerous times, and in speaking to other volunteers that were also familiar with him, none of us had witnessed handling sensitivities even after his reported illness. In fact, he was always easy to walk, engaging and calm, and enjoyed his toys. We believe these reported sensitivities to be due to pain and illness during examination. I again stated that an emergency animal hospital was better equipped and trained to meet his needs, and requested that he be transferred, properly diagnosed, and treated for Dolly's fund to be used as it was intended. He was ill for almost 6 weeks and never treated or diagnosed by MCAS staff. In fact, the reason listed by MCAS for his euthanasia was severe illness beyond the shelter's ability to treat. We believe he should have been transferred to an emergency hospital for this illness, and some of the over $700,000 in Dolly's funds should have been used as intended to diagnose and treat the animals at MCAS whose medical needs are beyond their capacity to do so. I've been there for over 9.5 years, and I've seen many dogs euthanized for medical. Why aren't we using these funds? Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super We the People Labs. Now, to MCAS and the volunteers, I think the only way to get them in line is to sue them. And I would recommend that you go to the Lewis and Clark Law Center, Animal Law Center, and begin providing this evidence and what you have, and bring a lawsuit against MCAS and get them in line. And if they can't do their job properly, shut them down through legal means. Now, moving on, again, to Chair Peterson, through legal means, the best attorneys, and to charge people that are negligent and are not doing their jobs properly, and remove them from their jobs. That's how you get results. Moving on, the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, I've heard that something about the mafia in Portland. And then I was watching on YouTube Sammy the Bull talking about Portland, Oregon. And again, to the mafia, I have no issues with you at all. My position is that for Tom Dundon, I think we're looking at a price reduction. And to Jody Allen, my good friend, I think we need to have discussions with Tom Dundon on reducing the price. And again, the coach was handcuffed and removed, and that's out of the deal. Remember, Tom Dundon bought the whole team. So the coach was handcuffed and removed out of his transaction. There could be other players involved. I don't know. A lot of people gamble. We don't know what's going to happen on here. Ongoing pending investigation. This can go on for years. Does the DOJ have a right to even stop the sale of the Portland Trail Blazers? I think they might. Now, my position to Jody Allen is I think Tom Dundon deserves to be treated with respect. And what I'd like you to propose is that you put up $500 million at the end of this sale when he closes toward a new arena. And that's just good business. That's just good business. Now, that $500 million, Jody Allen, can also be paid back within 10 years, paid back within 5 years, put back into the foundation. It's good business to step in and take care of him. He doesn't deserve to be in the middle of this. He doesn't deserve to have the mafia in the middle of this. And again, to the mafia, I have no issues with you. I'm speaking on behalf of Tom Dundon, my own opinion, what I think should happen as far as the price reduction. And I think Jody Allen might even agree with this. So again, to Jody Allen, I'm proposing at the end of this sale, when it closes, to set aside $500 million to be used for a new arena, and then to Mr. Tom, he can pay that back within either 5 years or 10 years. So you give him some time to get things together, get through these issues, get everything, a new coach maybe in position, make sure there's no other players involved, which I hope there's not. I hope there's not. And get everything moving along in the manner it used to be before this was brought forward, before the FBI was up there, before we had Kash Patel, before we had the mafia involved. This is a big deal. This is a big deal for the NBA. Handle it properly, Jody Allen. Take care of him. Thank you so much for consideration.
Thank you.
R1, resolution authorizing reduction or waiver of land use planning fees.
I have a motion.
Second.
Commissioner Singleton moves, Commissioner Moyer seconds, approval of R1. Good morning. Yeah. Good morning. Good. And we just had some questions about the consent calendar, but we're all good, so. All right, good morning. I'm going to turn it over to Margie Bradway and Megan Gibb from DCS to talk about our first item today.
Good morning. My name is Margie Bradway. I'm the DCS director, and I'm losing my voice, so I'm going to keep my piece of this limited, sorry. So just a reminder, this is a follow-up item to direction that you gave as a board during the last budget session. We presented the land use fee study. At that time, Commissioner Singleton asked, do you have the authority to waive fees? We said, no, we did not. And so we are bringing this back earlier. And I just want to acknowledge there's also a budget note on general fee waivers. We felt like it was important to follow up on this one specifically because we were asked to do so. So with no further ado, I'll hand it off to Land Use Director Megan Gibb.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Megan Gibb. I serve as the Land Use Planning Director. We do have a PowerPoint. Is that? It's very short. And if not, we can wing it.
Did you get one? Sure. Did you get a PowerPoint? You did not.
It doesn't look like there are any posted.
Okay, we can wing it. We're good. We're good. It's a short item, so
Okay.
we'll save some time.
2 slides, so you're not missing much. As Margie mentioned, we did complete a fee study in the fall of 2025. We presented that to the board in March, and one of the recommendations was to allow the planning director to waive or reduce fees. And then on July 1st, we raised fees 54%, and that was paired with a conversation about the ability to waive fees in certain circumstances. So here we are before the board today with that resolution to authorize the land use planning director to waive or reduce fees. And then we also have some draft criteria that we've been working on. And they've had initial review from legal, but we're still under discussion with legal about those criteria. So if you'd like, we can go through those. It's up to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate the work to try to get some more flexibility into our land use. Did we have any public testimony on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, do we have any questions from the board on this?
I just had one.
Okay, Commissioner Singleton, we'll start with you and then we'll go this way.
Thank you. Just one question, thank you. I really appreciate you moving this forward, and I know you're ahead of everybody else that's involved in the budget note, so thank you for being first. Hopefully lessons learned can inform other processes. The one thing I'm curious about is, do you have a plan for kind of assessing who does get awarded fee waivers, who doesn't, understanding that data, and looking at any kind of need to make some shifts, as well as consumer feedback of like how the process is working?
Yeah, absolutely. I should have mentioned this. Our intention is to do an annual review of the program, especially since it's a pilot, but we would want to do that anyway. We want to see what the financial implications are from the waiver program and who's actually benefiting from it. So that is absolutely part of our plan.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brim Edwards, any questions?
Yes, I mean, this builds somewhat on Commissioner Singleton's question and also the dialogue we had before the meeting on this. I know there's a larger sort of fee waiver budget note coming, so this is sort of relates to this particular agenda item, but also the future one, is that I feel really strongly that we, in addition to, I'm pleased to see that the request for waivers must be in writing, because I think we need to be able to have some transparency and also accountability on what's being asked. But I feel really strongly that we should have a consistent way of recording those and memorializing it so that we're able to see, as a commission, just globally at a high level, the number of fee waivers that are being granted and under what criteria, and then also just the amount of revenue that is foregone by the county, just best practice. And again, this would be in the, so I'm glad you're planning on doing that. I do think we should have it actually embedded in our process going forward. So when the bigger fee waiver process comes back, I would hope that that would be part of it, and that you all would be then sort of part of the one county approach as well. So that's something that I would expect that we would get back. And again, I know you're leading the way in this particular area, and I want to just make sure that we keep that in mind as we move ahead.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
Yep, great. Thank you, Chair. And looking forward to continuing to support this work. Could you just give us a high-level overview as far as the criteria that's going to be, that's
Sure.
in draft form now? And
Yes.
that would be great.
Yeah. Right now, we're considering financial hardship for community members that have lower incomes, and that's 60% of MFI, which is what our weatherization program utilizes. We have a proposal for Native American tribes and organizations that serve tribal members. Community land trusts, whose missions include serving new farmers and increasing access to agricultural land, nonprofit organizations that grow food for low-income communities, and affordable housing projects. Caveat with that, we don't have a lot of very little multifamily zone land in the rural areas, but in the event that something could shift, or when we allow ADUs or a zoning code update, we want to be poised to be able to offer that.
Can I just, I will just add that some of this criteria is still being discussed between our department and the attorney's office in terms of passing the non-discrimination review. So there, it's draft at this point.
Yes, great. Just one other thing that I think I mentioned during the briefing, just if there could be there's been a lot of conversations around like agro-tourism and just ways to boost the economic. If there's, I think I'll talk to you about it more offline as far as like whether that can be woven in and how that may impact the fees and stuff like that.
Okay, we can look at that. Happy to talk about it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Moyer, any questions? No? Okay. I don't have any questions either. I do appreciate you guys leading on this work, and this is something that we've been talking about for a while now on how do we create flexibility. I'm also know that this is a part of the larger land use update that you guys are taking part in, and so I also appreciate the fact that this is a way to get ahead of it, to be responsive, but also I'm really looking hard at our entire land use policy to make sure it makes sense for the people of Multnomah County, especially the folks in unincorporated Multnomah County that we work with so closely. So thank you so much for this. Tasia, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Moyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Singleton? Aye. Commissioner Brim-Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Vega-Peterson?
Aye, the resolution is adopted.
R2, resolution approving an increased contract price for the Bridge Shop Fire Remediation Project.
May I have a motion? So moved. Second. Commissioner Singleton moves, Commissioner Brim-Edwards seconds, approval of R2. Good morning.
Good morning.
We have some good news about the Bridge Shop reopening, which is good, and this is part of that work, so I'll let you go ahead and take it forward.
All right. Good morning, Chair Vega-Peterson and Commissioners. My name is Kim Porter. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a construction contract negotiator senior with the Department of County Assets. With me today is Christina Pomrinke, the FPM Project Delivery Program Manager. We're here today seeking board approval to increase the Bridge Shop contract price for the fire remediation project. The increased costs are due to unforeseen conditions and a decision to replace an outdated stair lift with an ADA-compliant platform lift to improve physical accessibility within the building. The additional costs, which exceed 33% of the contract amount, require board approval pursuant to the PCRB rules. We are here today to obtain approval by the board prior to authorization of performance of the work. I will now turn it over to Christina to provide additional background information for the project.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I am Christina Pomeranke, the Facilities and Property Management Project Delivery Program Manager. The county-owned Bridge Shop building located on 1403 Southeast Water Avenue sustained significant fire damage to its garage and adjacent office space due to a fuel leak. The necessitated extensive infrastructure replacement and remediation efforts were caused after this, or because of the fire, we did all these things. During the remediation and rebuilding, $488,000 in change orders were issued to address unforeseen needs not discovered until after the construction contract was signed. One of the change orders included repairing an existing stair lift. However, parts and materials to repair or replace the stair lift were discovered to no longer be available. With parts and materials no longer available and the existing stair lift requiring a second person to assist individuals using wheelchairs, the project team proposed replacing the existing stair lift with a platform lift. This upgrade will enable individuals and mobility devices to operate the lift independently, provide easy access for motorized chairs to the upper level, and ensure the building complies with current Americans with Disabilities Act code standards. Although insurance will cover project remediation costs, it will not cover the full cost of a new platform lift, as it is not an existing part of the building at the time of the fire. To address this funding gap, $150,000 has been allocated from the ADA lift from capital improvement funds within the Facilities Capital Improvement Fund Program 78245. Of the $488,000 in change orders, $338,000 is being covered by insurance, and $150,000 is being paid for with the funds that I had just mentioned. We will pause here and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Tasia, do we have any public testimony on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. We'll go to the board for any questions. We'll start with Commissioner Grimm-Edwards.
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
I don't have any questions either. Thanks. Thank you.
Moyer? Commissioner Moyer?
Yeah, I'm thrilled we're doing this. Thank you all for realizing that this was an opportunity to significantly improve the accessibility on our bridge. Having personally seen the former lift operations, this is going to be appreciated by the community, and so I appreciate this being brought forward and strongly support it.
Thank you. Commissioner Singleton, any questions?
Thank you. I do have one, and I think it might actually be for Director Massey. I'm just curious what the impact is of this to other projects that were on the capital improvement plan. Is there anything that is not going to be funded, or just what's an update on the rest of those projects?
I could actually answer that, Commissioner Singleton. So for each fiscal year, our 5-year capital plan includes a designated reserve of funds to address unforeseen circumstances that may arise throughout the fiscal year. With a built-in approval process within facilities, these funds can be allocated to specific project scopes, provided the requests align with intended use of the reserve. So in this specific instance, these funds were utilized to address an accessibility issue. In account 2507, we began the fiscal year with $1.65 million in miscellaneous funds. The $150,000 required for the particular project was drawn from that reserve.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I don't have any questions. Again, just really happy to see the additional improvements, as Commissioner Moore stated, to this project, and to have this the shop ready to reopen. I know that it was incredibly impactful to all of the employees at the Bridge Shop when this fire happened, and it's really great to have this milestone happening. So thank you. Tasia, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Moyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Grimm-Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Vega-Peterson?
Aye, the resolution is adopted. All right, thank you.
R3, second reading of ordinance amending MCC Chapter 3, Budget Advisory Committees.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Grimm-Edwards moves, Commissioner Singleton seconds, approval of R3. All right, so this is the second reading, and we have Amada Perez here to just remind us of some of the highlights from the ordinance changes. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. I am back. My name is Amada Perez, Director of the Office of Community Involvement. I'm back as follow-up reading 2 for the CBAC code changes, which I brought forward 2 weeks ago. I had jury duty last week, so apologize for the skipped week. As a recap, these changes were presented in July from the Central CBAC office, Central CBAC cohort, which had a unique focus last year on looking at program improvement. And the Central CBAC focusing on programmatic improvement was a strategy that was part of a larger, multifaceted, multi-year improvement plan. So I'm really here just to, I made the amendment from the last conversation we had to not strike the DA's office and the sheriff's office. So that amendment, Commissioner Singleton, I think you presented is accounted for in the revised ordinance. As a reminder, these code changes as presented by the Central CBAC were really meant to better clarify and define membership, responsibilities, and operations of the CBAC at large. I didn't receive any questions in between the first and second reading, so, but happy to be here to discuss any questions or thoughts you may have about these presented code changes.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here to cover this. Tasia, did we have any public testimony on this item?
Yes.
All right. Amada, would you just step back there, and we'll call you back in just a minute after public testimony.
Lightning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super We the People Labs. One of the things when we're talking about my good friends at the DA office, I want to make sure that we have an understanding that one of the things that were originally, I believe, in the budget that was going to be cut was people reviewing the body-worn camera, audio and video. And where I'm at on that issue is I think that's the most important issue to be funded. And I want to make it perfectly clear from my position is that the body-worn cameras on the Portland Police and being able to review that audio and video from more of a forensic analysis from the professionals that can really understand how to use that for all parties involved. It can be used if the police are in the wrong against the police, but if the individuals are in the wrong. So you have something in the middle that you can analyze for all parties. If a complaint is filed, who's right, who's wrong? Let's go back to the video and audio. Who would a jury believe probably more often would be law enforcement over here? But no, let's go back to the video and audio and have it analyzed. It is so important to have that body-worn camera, video and audio analyzed by the professionals but to protect all parties involved on the interaction. All parties, especially when we're talking complaints. And for the Portland Police, yes, that was not voluntary to have that put on there. That was Federal Judge Michael Simon, and I was at the meetings when the union attorneys were there and everybody was sitting there. This is the way it's going to be, and you're going to have the body-worn cameras. You're in breach. You're going to have them put on you. And you know what's interesting is that a lot of the Portland Police think it's one of the best things that's ever happened. Because you have that video and audio in the middle, and we can analyze it, and it's so important that that audio and video gets analyzed. What good is the body-worn cameras if you don't analyze the audio and video? And when I was talking to Federal Judge Michael Simon, I said, you know, these body-worn cameras, what good are they if you don't have a well-written policy? And I even looked at him, I said, you know, Federal Judge Michael Simon, you're the one who could write this better than anyone. And if you understand his history from the Simon family, you understand what I'm saying.
Thank you.
So do not ever cut the DA's office for something so important, and make sure it's funded, any and all costs. And if necessary, you can ask me and I'll get private developers to fund it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, I'll invite you back up here, and we'll open up to the board for any questions. Commissioner Jones-Dixon, any questions?
Yeah, just a comment. I asked a question earlier about the difference between the minimum members being 3 or 5. I was stuck on whether or not there should be an odd number in order to ensure that the work is moving forward. I believe you mentioned to me that you haven't noticed a difference whether it's odd or even it doesn't change. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. The best way I think about it, just for context, the Central CBAC recommended a minimum of 2, and most of us didn't feel comfortable with that. After talking to most of the departmental CBAC coordinators, we've talked a lot about a minimum. And the way I think about a minimum is really the minimum is about compliance. It's not really about the program. So historically, we've struggled to meet compliance across all 10 departmental CBACs. In discussions for the last year, 4 has felt like, 1, we can meet across all CBACs with the improvement plan that we're working toward. Setting the minimum as, through a lens of odd and even doesn't prevent us from having an even number of people on the CBAC. It also has not programmatically been a barrier when voting, for example. So after much discussion with CBAC coordinators, looking towards how do we make sure the county is in compliance, 4 felt like something we could achieve countywide, and also is more than 2. And again, we don't want to be at the minimum. Our goal is to really have a robust team of 11, ideally, but it does just help us to have an amount that we can actually be in compliance toward and also just work from that place.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for asking that.
Yes. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Moyer, any questions? Commissioner Singleton? Commissioner Brown-Edwards?
No, I just appreciate the adjustments that were made last time, and you're willing to come back again, and the patience in getting this over the finish line. I'm supportive of the language as it exists now.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just want to thank you for all of the work that you've done on this, both with the CBAC. I want to thank the Central CBAC for the recommendations and the way that you've worked to make sure that it works for the departments and the counties and the public, and really just want to appreciate the work that you've done overall on the entire CBAC process. It's a huge change from what we've had even just a couple of years ago. So thank you.
Well, I have definitely appreciated the support of the board and want to say next week we kick off our fall recruitment cycle. So each of your offices will be receiving a recruitment packet, and we're excited to dedicate this month to addressing existing vacancies. So thank you for your ongoing support.
Thank you so much. Tasha, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Moyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brim-Edwards? Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Vega Peterson?
Aye, the ordinance is adopted.
R4, budget modification number HSD-001-26, FY 2026 rebalance.
May I have a motion? May I have a second? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Singleton moves, Commissioner Moyer seconds, approval of R4. Good morning. Welcome to Anna and Antoinette. Thank you for being here today. So this is the final budget modification for the state rebalance budget work that this board has been doing over the last several weeks. These are the changes that we're making to our approved budget because of the federal and state funding cuts that we have based on their final budgets that have come out. I want to really appreciate both HSD, but also all of the departments for the work on offering creative solutions in a tight resource environment, and also recognizing that there are some things that we cannot backfill just because of the state and federal impacts that are happening. I know that you are also going to be providing a preview of FY27, which I think will be helpful for the board as well to have that context. And I want to acknowledge the many of our providers and partners who have invested in these decisions. and thank those who are in the room or watching virtually. And Commissioner Singleton, I believe you had some comments on this?
Just
at the end? Okay, that's great.
At the time, when it's our turn.
When it's your turn. Okay, great, thank you. I'm just looking at my notes. There's a little highlight. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Anna and Antoinette then to walk us through the presentation.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Anna Plum, and I'm the Interim Director for the Homeless Services Department. Nice to be back with you today. Per the Chair's statement, this is our final presentation on the state-federal rebalance, and we are asking you to vote on the actual budget modification today. We have just been before you twice to talk about some various options. We now have a final option, and we're hoping we can get that adopted today. Next slide, please. Just as a quick reminder for you all and for anyone who might be new to this particular presentation, we are receiving for this year, a biennium, a total of $26 million from the state. This is a reduction from what we anticipated getting in our adopted budget. We built our FY 2026 adopted budget based upon the governor's recommended budget and an assumption of 20% allocation from the state based upon historical funding patterns with the state. There was then a change from the governor's recommended to the legislative budget, which was a significant reduction in many of the areas that fund our budget. So we are looking at a $28 million or 55% reduction in funding from what we adopted in our budget to what we're actually going to be receiving from the state. If we do nothing to backfill that, we are looking at a potential loss of shelter units, 650 folks who would not be at risk of not being sustained in their housing, and 732 people that we would not be able to newly place into housing. We originally came to you recommending backfilling $20 million to maintain some of those services. We're landing close to that number again today, but some of the details are different, so we're going to walk you through those differences today. Next slide, please. So our update today is we're getting close to the option A that we presented last week or a few weeks ago. We do have a decision from the state with the state year 2 shelter funding. We have had verbal agreements with folks from the governor's office. We're waiting on that formal okay, but we feel very, very good about this, and we are ready to move forward with the bud mod based upon the conversations that we've had. The total amount that we are hoping to get from the state in addition to what was in our budget allocation so far is $4.9 million, and I'm going to walk through where that funding is coming from. $3 million is funding that we will be pulling down from our second year state shelter allocation. That will leave us about just over $6 million for the year 2 funding for state shelter programming. We are also going to use $1.7 million in carryover from the ORI program. That's the Oregon Rehousing Initiative. That's funding that was originally earmarked for households in 2027, and we are using that to backfill funding in this fiscal year. And the state will be giving us an additional $200,000 in long-term rent assistance to sustain another 6 households. This is very similar. It's the same total amount of funding that we're receiving from the state. However, it's just slightly different buckets, so we wanted to make sure that was clear to you all moving forward. Next slide. So we are still proposing to backfill about $20 million, and Antoinette will go through the details. I just want to be clear about all the different sources we're using to backfill to close a $28 million gap. We are going to use $6.4 million in one-time only general fund. That was previously capital that was dedicated to the East County Homelessness Resource Center, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. We have $3.8 million in unbudgeted supportive housing fund carryover. There's the $4.9 million from the state that I just reviewed. As we discussed in our previous presentation, we are converting some funding for sort of place-based 24/7 shelter into a new scattered site motel flexible voucher program that saves us $4.4 million, which we are using to help close the gap. And we're reallocating a little bit of placement out of shelter to get to a final number that we think will allow us to sustain the households that we think will need funding in this fiscal year. Next slide, please. I briefly stated, but I want to highlight that this budget modification does indicate a formal move away from the East County Homelessness Resource Center. We are dedicating that funding to close our gap to keep shelter open and to keep people in their housing. This is a policy choice that we are making in coordination with the county chair and with District 4 in response to community feedback that both HSD and District 4 received about the East County Homelessness Resource Center. I did provide a link in the PDF to the previous presentation that we did in coordination with District 4 about this recommendation. I do want to note that we're committed to providing resources to our East County partners. We do continue to fund the Gresham Homeless Services Team and specific outreach programs in East County, as well as a liaison to East County. We are continuing conversations on how we partner with those jurisdictions in our monthly meetings and ongoing conversations with all of our East County jurisdictions. Next slide, please. So what does option A get us? We talked about the money, and Antoinette will go in more. What are we able to do by closing about $20 million of the $28 million gap? Like I said, this aligns with our original recommendation. We are funding to the level that will sustain the folks that we either know or estimate will need to be sustained in their housing this fiscal year. That's 451 people in long-term rent assistance and 600 people in rapid rehousing. What that means is folks are not at risk of losing their housing. That being said, it is a reduction in new placements. Some of the new state funding does require new placements, so the only new placements that we're receiving with this bulk of money is 320 folks that are related to new state funding. We are also using that cost savings from the scattered site motel voucher model, that $4.4 million. We are using that to sustain people in their housing, which means we are not using it to add more shelter to the system. We went through these options in our last presentation. Option A uses that funding to sustain folks in housing. That means that we are staying at the current funding level for the community sheltering strategy of adding 815 units to the community out of the 1,000 that was a part of the original goal. When we talked about this in our original adopted budget, and it bears repeating now, those goals were set when we had a significantly different funding scenario in our community. As we talked about in our 2026 adopted budget, and what I want to reiterate here is that we are responsible to fund a balance of services that helps people stay safe but also gets them into housing. We made the decision that our first priority is to sustain folks in their housing, so we're using that funding to do that, to sustain folks in their housing rather than adding shelter. It was not an easy decision. We do think it's the right decision in this moment to make sure that we are supporting people to stay in their housing and providing an array of services from shelter to housing placement. I'm going to pass it to Antoinette to get into the funding details now.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Antoinette Payne. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Finance Manager Senior for the Homeless Services Department. Next slide, please. So as Director Plum uplifted, Option A utilizes all identified funding backfill sources, totaling about $20 million. This, as you can see from the chart, fully covers shelters and long-term rent assistance. It doesn't, however, fully get us to backfill all of the rehousing. Next slide, please. And this is just a summary, a slide that essentially summarizes the initial proposal and Option A. Both options, as you can see, are similar to the backfill amounts, and it achieves the same outcomes we were trying to preserve initially. Next slide, please. The department has other funding impacts that the rebalance addresses that was uplifted in our first briefing. Next slide. Really quickly, this is a technical only fix. There is a funding swap with the City of Portland, General Fund, and Supportive Housing Services for $5 million. Next slide, please. There's another technical only fix which decreases the City of Portland SHS by $1.7 million. Just a reminder, they already have this money. We sent it to FY24. We're just doing a technical fix to true up the budget. Next slide, please. We have additional funds in SHS. We will be increasing SHS by $7.1 million. Next slide. And so what we're here today to request for the board is to rebalance our department's budget. Next slide. So essentially, this budget modification does the following. It decreases the federal state fund in the amount of $28.6 million. It increases the supporting housing fund in the amount of $7.1 million. It increases general fund in the amount of $6.4 million as a cash transfer from the Department of County Assets from our Homeless Services Capital Fund. And lastly, it decreases Cook Plaza East County Capital Project in the amount of $6.4 million. Next slide. All those actions combined, essentially, as a result of this budget modification, the department budget decreases by $15.1 million. In the previous slide, we communicated that the total budget change was a decrease of $9.2 million. This clerical error in the calculated total budget change does not change the overall backfill amount, which remains at $20 million. This technical error affects only the overall change in our revised budget for FY26. Importantly, no services are further impacted. Our services impacts describes remains the same. So I'm going to pass it off to Director Plum to kind of give us to what we're looking forward to in the future.
Thanks, Antoinette. Next slide, please. And next slide. So this BudMod today balances our budget for this fiscal year, but we do want to acknowledge that we have more discussions coming our way that are going to be even more difficult than the ones we've had with you over the last month. We anticipate further reductions in funding looking at next fiscal year 2027. We anticipate a $63 million reduction in our one-time only SHS carryover, and we know that we still have that. We're one-time only filling a state backfill of $20 million. We do not have ongoing funds to perform that backfill next fiscal year. We will only have ongoing funding available for SHS next fiscal year as well. We also know there's changes in the local economy, and we have potential federal impacts coming. So this is one step in balancing us for this fiscal year, but we know we have more to come. Next slide, please. I do want to acknowledge that we are using this state rebalance to backfill services that we think we need to keep in this fiscal year, but we also are trying to prepare ourselves for a ramp down of services next fiscal year. We know that we are building towards a new set of HRAP indicators, and we are also working on indicators with Metro around SHS. Our goal as a department is to review and recommend what our core services are and what we need to do as a department to support folks ending their homelessness and to reduce homelessness in the community. We are anticipating a lot of conversations with our partners about how we can all work together in a constrained resource environment to provide a holistic and balanced homeless services system that provides the array of services that the community needs to reduce homelessness across the board. One thing I want to note is that we are doing this rebalance now, and we are dedicating funds to both shelter and housing. But we do routinely, as we go through the year, look at what our spending looks like and whether or not our spending is aligning with what we expect it to be. We routinely monitor our spending to see if there are opportunities to reallocate funding in different directions if there's lower spending one place, and we have an opportunity to, for example, house more folks with funding that is not being spent in one area. That is something we routinely look at. We will continue to look at that as we manage our funding in this fiscal year. And we want to do it carefully so that we know we're not setting ourselves up for an even larger fiscal cliff by placing folks that we may not have funds to sustain in the next fiscal year. This budget will require some cuts to provider contracts. Our next step is to be really thoughtful about what those cuts look like and how we balance that across rent assistance and staffing to make sure that we are providing providers with funding that is rational and allows them to house people and sustain them and also maintain their organizations. So our next step is to be really careful about how we take those cuts in provider contracts and work with our providers on those decisions. That is the presentation that we have for you today. We're happy to take your questions in anticipation of a vote.
All right, thank you so much. I know we have a few people signed up for public testimony, so if you guys want to move to those back chairs, and then we'll bring you back up in just a couple minutes for board questions and comments. Tasia.
Yeah, we have 5 people signed up. We're going to start with Laura Galino de Lovato, Joanna Harrigal, Philip Berlin, and Andy Miller.
Good morning. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Vega Peterson and commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide some testimony on the HSD rebalance. My name is Laura Golino de Lovato. I'm the Executive Director of Northwest Pilot Project. We're a nonprofit organization that serves very low-income older adults with housing placement and stability in Multnomah County, and we are an HSD contractor and have been for years. I really want to start by first appreciating the difficulty of this entire situation for all of us, from providers to community members to our clients, and the positions that you're in, and to our colleagues at HSD, Anna and Antoinette. I really want to appreciate the hard work that they've done in hearing from me and some of my colleagues a lot, asking a lot of questions, but also wrangling a lot of the numbers. So thank you, Anna and Antoinette. Really appreciate that. I also want to support option A, and am delighted to see that Anna is also advocating for option A. We must keep people in housing who are already in housing. That's really important. But I'll get to the point because I see that green light blinking. The lack of clarity about the provider cuts, and I heard what Anna just said, is really concerning to me. Any cut to any one part of our system, it has a ripple effect throughout our system. And what I would like to ask is for the board to delay the vote on this, delay the vote today until we have a better understanding of the scope of those cuts, what they might look like, have providers give an opportunity to weigh in so that they make the least harmful impact on our community and especially on those we serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today, Chair Vega Peterson and Commissioners. My name is Joanne Harrigal. I live in Portland, and I'm the board chair for Northwest Pilot Project. In the last year, Northwest Pilot Project has faced funding cuts triggered by the shift in priorities of the federal government. The ripple effect of these cuts has impacted many sources of funding. This, in turn, is impacting the vulnerable seniors served by Northwest Pilot Project. It was disappointing to me and to others to learn that the budget rebalance of the Homeless Services Department looks like it will result in more cuts to the nonprofit organizations working to help people moving from homelessness into housing and keeping them there. With cuts to SNAP, potential cuts to HUD funding, and a shortage of affordable housing, now is not the time to make even more cuts to our housing and homeless services. After looking at information related to the proposal to rebalance the HSD budget, I see that about $4 million will have to be cut from current contracts with service providers in the county. However, it is unclear which nonprofits or which services will bear the burden of those cuts. As a community member and as a board member of Northwest Pilot Project, I'd like to know specifically what the county's plan is and how it will affect agencies, as well as how it fits with the broader strategy to address our homeless population during these budget shortfalls. If housing placements, for instance, are cut, will people end up in shelters for months or years? If case management is cut, who will help a low-income family to do a reasonable accommodation if they don't make it past the rental application stages, et cetera? I strongly urge the board to delay its vote on this issue until it has both received specific information about the proposed provider cuts and has had time to review them. I urge you to look more deeply and creatively at ways to fund these important services and what the priorities should be. A good place to start might be to ask service provider organizations what they think and develop a coordinated rebalance proposal that minimizes the impact on this vulnerable population. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Next, we have Andy Miller, who is virtual. Andy, you can unmute yourself and begin. And after that, we'll have lightning.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chair Vega Peterson. For the record, my name is Andy Miller. I'm the Executive Director at Our Just Future. Like others before me, I do want to acknowledge how difficult it is for you to have to make mid-year budget adjustments. We understand the fiscal pressures you're navigating, and we do appreciate HSD's efforts to bring forward a proposal that largely backfills much of the shortfall. That said, I don't believe this moment is the right one to reset our homeless services system to one that mostly pauses its work to move people from shelter in the streets into permanent housing. acknowledge a system reset is needed, one that both improves coordination and collaboration, and one that is better aligned with the harsh projected budget realities we're staring down from all the primary funding jurisdictions. But a mid-year rebalance, this is not the moment to make structural changes that could have far-reaching and destabilizing effects, and that's our concern with the proposal. We're deeply concerned that the proposal from HSD lacks balance and concentrates nearly the entire reduction in contracted services on housing placement and rapid rehousing programs that truly and sustainably end homelessness and that open up shelter beds in fully funded shelters. As a shelter operator, we know firsthand what happens when housing placements stop. Morale in shelter declines. Shelter participants begin to lose hope when they do not see people moving out of shelter, and the entire shelter milieu is strained when people remain stuck for an interminable period of time. We're also worried about the uncertainty in how this proposal impacts our homeless services workforce. As we've shared with you in the past, our staff is already underpaid and they're stretched pretty thin. Further contraction, especially this abruptly, is going to deepen concerns across staffing about job security, and it really undermines the stability we've really worked hard to rebuild. We urge the Commission and HSD to dig deeper for alternatives that don't center the entire $4 million cut entirely on funded programs and staffing that are actively ending homelessness. Are there any unopened shelters or unfilled positions at HSD whose investments could be delayed to the next fiscal year to give us time to plan? Can we buy more time to collaborate on the broader system resets that's needed before destabilizing active programs and laying off newly hired staff under contracts that we just signed 3 months ago? I think that's one of our biggest concerns. We just staffed up based on contract assumptions that were in place July 1. Now it's October and we may have to lay people off who were recently hired. That would be tragic. We urge exploration of additional alternatives before we buy into a proposal that on its face mostly ends new housing placements, perhaps the most important and cost-effective interventions we're currently funding. We appreciate your leadership and thank you for considering a more balanced path forward.
Next up, we have Lightning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super We the People Labs. One of the concerns I have is on that Cook Plaza. It sounds to me like you want to decrease that by somewhere around $6 million. I absolutely disagree with that. And I want to make sure that they're well-funded and have the funds that they want, all my good friends who want to do that Cook Plaza. So do not decrease that by $6 million. Again, one of the biggest concerns I have is that from the county's position, you've kind of followed in, or let's just say rode the coattail of the city who got the affordable housing bond, of the Metro who got the SHS, and which you're utilizing all those funds right now. But really, when you look at Multnomah County, you really haven't done a whole lot as far as getting the funding, which is so necessary to get into permanent housing. And what I'm talking about is you could be working on an affordable housing bond right now. You could be working on it, planning, working, trying to figure out when you might want to roll it out. And as you know, they did that at Metro and the city of Portland. And I was originally working with Dan Salzman on the original one that the city of Portland, as a lot of people might not understand, never did an affordable housing bond in all their history. And I stood up and looked at Salzman and I said, why don't you get out of your chair? Why don't you do something, and do something like they did the late Mayor Ed Lee in San Francisco and roll something out? Why don't you do that? And all the commissioners used to say, well, we're waiting on the federal government to take care of us. Well, $28 million budget shortfall waiting on the federal government. That's not an excuse anymore. You need to roll out another affordable housing bond, Multnomah County. take a risk for once. Don't ride the coattails. Don't take all the credit for riding someone else's coattail, but do something yourself. An affordable housing bond for Multnomah County. Plan it, roll it out to the voters. Like I said to Commissioner Salzman, you're getting ready to leave, your term limited out, you'll get a yes or no. What do you have to lose? One person in the audience pointing right at Salzman. Roll it out. And he got it approved. And then that blazed the trail for Metro, another $687,000. From Metro. Where's Multnomah County at the table on this, on building new housing? That's what we need. An affordable housing bond, roll it out, get the job done. Don't ride the coattails anymore.
Thank you so much.
One last call from Philip Berlin.
Good morning.
Please press the bottom of the end of the.
My apologies. Good morning. Good morning, Chair Vega Peterson and commissioners. My name is Phil Berlin, and I serve as the Homeless Housing Supervisor with Self-Enhancement. Thank you for this opportunity to share on this critical matter. I want to acknowledge at the onset that these decisions before you are very difficult. Honestly, I don't envy the position that you're in. Rebalancing the HSD budget means something has to be reduced. But I urge you to consider how damaging it would be to eliminate shelter services, placement services out of shelter. Yes, shelter is an important step in the housing journey. It provides safety and stability in times of crisis, but it's only part of the process. Without placement and retention services, shelter becomes a holding pattern and not a pathway to permanent housing. Right now, our system is deeply misaligned. We are overinvested in shelter and underinvested in the services that help people move beyond it. This imbalance has created bottlenecks, longer stays, and fewer exits. This is not just inefficient, it's a breakdown in the system that fails to restore public trust. Expanding shelters while cutting placement services would only deepen this misalignment and further destabilize the housing continuum. SEI stands with our partners across the housing system in unified support of preserving both placement and retention services. We know these services are an essential bridge from shelter to permanent housing. But at the same time, SEI is not here to protect our own funding. In fact, our agency would only experience minimal impact from the proposed rebalancing. We're here to advocate for a system that works, a system that is aligned, where shelter, placement, and retention work together to serve our community. This is what our county deserves. We urge you to halt shelter expansion and preserve the vital resources that ensure people don't just enter shelter, they get to move forward from it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for public testimony.
All right, great. Well, I'll invite Antoinette and Anna back up, and we will go to the board for questions. And Commissioner Singleton, go ahead. Oh, well then, Commissioner Moyer, please go first.
I have some questions so that I can wrap my head around this. How much money, if any, is the county giving the city for its overnight-only shelters?
We initially gave the city about $375,000 to help with the initial onset of the first few months of the first few shelters. We are not currently giving them any funding. The caveat to that is that we did pass through $15 million of one-time only money from Metro to the city per a board vote earlier this year.
And that's all been passed through?
Correct.
Are we giving any money for the so-called day oasis or day whatever they call that?
We would have to ask them if the $15 million was helping fund that center, but nothing outside of that, no.
I do not envy what you were asked to do. This is a really horrible scenario to be under. I did not, and said during the budget process how profoundly uncomfortable I was relying on the governor's recommended budget. I have spent 2 decades lobbying the Oregon legislature related to budget issues and have rarely seen the governor's recommended budget, particularly areas of significant new investment, come through without being substantially altered. And I think we'll talk about how to move forward. I share a very real concern that the emergency shelter to out-of-shelter placement is one in which we will bottleneck. I am concerned about that. I am also concerned we have unused shelter beds. I have my own feelings of why they're unused. I think they probably would be used if they were more appropriate. But what is the projected, you mentioned it, but I'm trying to wrap my head around it. What is the projected shortfall in SHS funding next year?
About $63 million because of the one-time only carryover that we have. We haven't received the updated forecast, but we'll get that in December. But as of today, it's $63 million.
I know borrowing $3 million from state funds for next year is tiny in comparison to that whole. I acknowledge that, but I am really uncomfortable with the degree we are creating an epic cliff for next year. And I'm also pretty uncomfortable not understanding what the cuts to existing providers actually mean. That doesn't mean I don't think you didn't do like the really hard work, because you clearly did. This is a really no-win situation. I'm just struggling a little bit with trying to think about how we get through this year, but also how we approach next year. And so right now I have really significant reservations moving forward without some of those answers. And I don't want that to be a reflection on the work that was done, because I think actually it's opening up real questions for me, because you did dig pretty deep and show what all of this means. So I just want to say that if I do not support this, it is not a reflection on that I think you didn't do good work. I just feel still unsure about where we're going. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Can I do want to speak to my colleagues who testified and the concern about the provider level cuts. Understanding their perspective, having the budget modification approved so that we have clarity on the cut that we need to take is what we need to do to then be able to design those provider level cuts. That's sort of the bind that we're in, is that we need to know with clarity what we're doing financially so we can then design those cuts thoughtfully and not do it and not have to rescind them or change them or do something else later. So I hear that desire, and for me it's a timing issue of we have to know what we're cutting so we can then do that thoughtfully. My concern is if you go too far down that road before you have clarity, you might end up making more changes that are even more damaging. So I totally understand the perspective of my colleagues who testified, and I have a different perspective on why we are where we are in this moment. But I hear what you're saying.
Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you. Could you say a little bit to that point about what your plan is for engagement with providers to help design what those reductions would be?
Yeah, so we will start sort of with our own analysis of where we have to take the cuts. We have providers who have different levels of funding, for example. And so if we know we have about $4 million to cut and we have this set of providers, it would most likely be conversations with like what, we provide this many FTE and this amount of rent assistance. We would love to take the majority of the cut in rent assistance so that we're not cutting staff, but we also can't have staff who don't have rent assistance to issue or people to case manage. So it would be conversations with providers around, we need to take this amount of cut. How can we do this in a way that doesn't destabilize your organization, sustains the households that you need to sustain, and hopefully gives you some ability to do new placements, which may or may not be feasible depending on the level of cut. So it will be conversations at the contract manager level, at the program director level, at my level to say, how can we figure this out so that we're not destabilizing one organization? We also will try to really focus on our racial equity goals. Who are you serving? Making sure we're not damaging those smaller systems who serve higher populations of BIPOC folks and who frankly just have less ability to take a cut and still maintain as an organization for the family, the youth, and the DSV. So we will start internally, and then that will become the conversations with the providers to think about how can we do this in a way that allows you to serve folks without destabilizing your organization.
Thank you. I want to encourage you, I know you heard from a number of folks today, but I'd encourage you to start with provider input before you develop your internal, this is how we think reduction should go, so that there is a broader system understanding of what they're looking at. And I appreciate providers today didn't come up here and talk just about their organization. I heard a lot about the system. And so hearing some of where they're seeing those pressures might be helpful as a starting point, as opposed to those of us who aren't doing the actual services on the ground being the first starting point. And thank you for bringing that up. I kind of went off of where I was going to start with. So I want to back up a little bit and just say, we've heard from a lot of folks already how difficult this is. I also want to appreciate the work that you all have done and other folks in the department. I know it's not just you two who are in these conversations, and so I want to appreciate all the staff who have been doing this, as well as our provider partners who are really the ones doing the critical work on the streets. We are in a position of declining federal, state, and local revenue. And I think during our 2026 budget process, we talked about around homeless services, how we expect 27 to be hard as well. I think the only way we get through this is with our intentionality and being thoughtful and strategic. We have to identify what is our core work as a county to end people's homelessness. I've been saying this since I started in December. We have to craft a system that is not based on a patchwork of programs, but is reflective of our values and is an actual system rooted in best practice and the funding realities of today. People say we can't build our way out of the homelessness crisis, and I think it's important to say we also can't shelter our way out of the homelessness crisis. What we can do is ensure that folks are moving through the system and back into permanent housing, and homelessness becomes not permanent or long-term, but something that is rather a temporary circumstance. I think it's also critical at this time where everything feels really hard and heavy to say that I have hope. I see a lot of passion in our providers. I know that folks are really out there doing good work. I think it's really critical that we look at reforms that we're either making as a county, like this shift, the proposals I put forward of the shift to hotel sheltering, moving from this site-based model of housing placement to a mobile in-reach model that actually is more equitable and can serve across the system. We've got SHS reforms that are also in line. We have HREP reforms that were mentioned today. I think all these pieces are true. We're doing, somebody asked me yesterday, is the county doing good work? And I said, yes, and more people are becoming homeless every day. I'd also just want to name, because I feel like we're getting sucked back into a shelter versus housing conversation that we all know is an arbitrary and false dichotomy. It's important to remember that our community sheltering strategy is not just shelter beds, but it's also about increased placements out of shelter, and that we really need to look at that whole sheltering strategy in where we're going to move this work forward in our 27 budget. So while I'll be supportive of this budget modification, I do want to make a motion to add a budget note to this so that should it pass, we have some clarity of focus for next steps. So the budget note would include that while HSD regularly monitors spend down, it would request the department to look at mid-year unspent funds and prioritize those dollars for housing placement out of shelter, backfilling any reductions we're doing today. and additionally to request a briefing to provide an update to the board after the state budget rebalance to understand where we are in regards to the outcomes, including housing placement off the streets, housing placement out of shelter, and a thorough review of your shelter assessment report that I know is due in kind of December timeframe.
Commissioner Singleton, could I make a just courtesy request that we get through our questions, and then I don't know if you're actually moving it now, or we could wait till after we go through the questions and then move it?
That's fine. That's not how we've done it to date. So when we did the last budget note, we did it this way. So that's why I put it in my talking points. So if we want to change process, that's fine. I just don't want to lose the opportunity to make that motion.
Just so you know, I'm supportive of the motion. I'm just wondering if.
Commissioner, it's up to you how you would like to do it. If you want to go forward with it, I'm happy to move forward with it, but if you don't mind waiting, I'll come back to you as soon as we get to
Like I say, I'm supportive of the motion. I was just.
Yeah, I'm fine to come back. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think my other question was the one that we talked about here. So I do think it's just, the last thing I want to say is that I do think we're over leveraged on shelter. I agree with a lot of our providers. And closing shelter in November is a terrible idea. And so I feel like we are in the bind of not good options, but I do want us to have, as we see that shelter assessment, be able to have some conversations about intentional wind down if we need to refund other programs to ensure that folks aren't stuck and warehoused in shelter. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and we'll come back to you. Commissioner Brim Edwards.
Thank you for the presentation and also for answering the series of questions I've had over the last several weeks, both in the meetings, but also in just the briefings. So I'm going to have a series of questions, and then after Commissioner Singleton moves her budget note and amendment, I'll then have a statement, but I just wanted to get some questions just on the record. So just to start out with, the shortfall that we have is primarily because the county built its budgets on the governor's budget versus the budget that was proposed by the Ways and Means chairs and also adopted by the legislature. The vast majority of it, 28 million or so?
Correct.
And the budget rebalance, while the reductions haven't been specified because you need to know how much it is, it will result in mid-year cuts to provider contracts. And while we have contracts, we have provisions that allow for mid-year reductions. Just for the record, they're nodding versus.
For the record, correct.
Okay. So as part of the Homeless Response Action Plan, the City of Portland, the county committed to a community sheltering strategy. Strategy 2, which is increase short-term shelter inventory by 1,000 beds by December 2025, as recommended by the fiscal year 2025 and 2026 Community Shelter Plan. That's correct. And based on the proposed budget rebalance, and this is a math question, the proposed budget rebalance and the 2 county shelters that are slated to close this spring, the county is on track to actually have a net 585 to 620 units of shelter, not the 1,000, correct?
If you subtract out, so for what you are referring to is that our adopted budget included, that was adopted by the board in June, included a plan to close the Market and YE shelters at the end of March 2026. That is 230 beds of congregate shelter. So if you subtract those from 815 that we're adding under the shelter, you do get to 585. That is correct.
Right, and the strategy is increase short-term shelter inventory, which assumes, I think least having been part of those conversations, it was a net increase. So we're just over maybe about around 2/3, between half and 2/3 of what the county had committed to through the sheltering strategy. And then an important piece of it, that same strategy, and I think Commissioner Singleton referenced this, that it also had flow-through rates. So we don't, the intention is not to have people sitting in shelter, but as a pathway, so providing basic services, safety, and a pathway to housing, that the flow-through rates were for adult 41% and for families 71%, and we're actually at 26 and 56. So the flow-through, and does the county count primarily on placement out of shelter services, funding and services to increase flow-through?
The question is if we primarily use placement out of shelter funding to increase flow-through at shelters? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah, so placement out of shelter, the program offer placement out of shelter is the primary funding source for placement out of shelters. We do have other rapid rehousing funds in our budget for placements that come directly from the street, from outreach, et cetera.
Okay. And then these were late questions I asked yesterday, and I'm just going to ask them on the record so that they're clear. On page 3 of the agenda placement request, it appears that there'll be about a $4 million reduction in the 20 program offers that are listed.
The $4 million reduction is pretty much in the rapid rehousing area, which is your housing placement and retention program offer. So I think there's like 3 of them in there.
Okay. And you've covered this already, but I ask, like, what specific dollar amounts are being reduced from each program offer, and what's the criteria? And I think you've said for the record that you need to know what the number is, and then you'll have that process, and I believe Commissioner Singleton's amendment and budget note will address that. I did also ask the Homeless Service Department and also the county's budget department this question, and just for the record, is there any underspend, unfilled positions, or administrative costs in the Homeless Services Department that could mitigate the impact of mid-year provider reductions?
So to the Commissioner Singleton's point, we will be monitoring programmatic underspend to see what we can reallocate to backfill any of these cuts. In terms of HSD administrative costs, we do not have significant administrative underspend or vacancies, and we are actually none of these cuts involve cuts to HSD at this time, and that's done purposely because, again, we are looking towards a probably major shift in our services in fiscal year 2027, and any changes to our department should align with the changes we're making to the system. So I think it makes sense to figure out what that might look like for our department as we build the next fiscal year's budget. So really waiting to make sure that we're making those cuts to our department, if we have to make them, thoughtfully and carefully, and in alignment with the systems that we're gonna change.
Great. And then I am going to ask the general budget question of Christian, but I would like to, I'll just finish my questions for you all, but you also answered this question, so I'd love to have it just on the record of generally, do we have other, or whoever's going to answer it, to have that question answered as a, but I'm going to finish with the HSD questions. So earlier this fall, based on Commissioner Jones-Dixon's community engagement and advocacy, the county stepped back from the plan to place services at the Cook Plaza site in Rockwood. At the last meeting, I asked it to be memorialized in the presentation, and it was, and I appreciate that. The question I would have, it's not entirely clear, those resources, my understanding is those resources that had not yet been expended would stay in District 3, and I'm not sure from reading the slide that that's clear. Is that the intent, and how much is that?
So the $6.4 million is going to close our general funding gap and specifically to maintain shelter units. With the size of the funding gap that we have and the need to keep our services open across the county, we are not able to specifically commit that $6.4 million to the East County jurisdiction in Gresham. We are continuing the funding for the Gresham Homeless Services team, the East County liaison, and the East County providers. I do want to note that the shelter that we are sustaining does exist in Gresham and East County. We were just at a family meeting last night for a new family shelter that is in Gresham. So we are continuing to support services in East County. With the size of the gap, we cannot commit $6.4 million to one area of the county without a plan. We're using it to backfill our existing gap. That being said, we have a lot of conversations to have about what it looks like to continue to partner with those jurisdictions in the next fiscal year and beyond.
Okay. I have two more questions. The dashboard on the county's website shows that essentially the implementation of the Homelessness Response Action Plan implementation has not resulted in a net decrease in homelessness or unsheltered homelessness. With this rebalance, has the county done projections on the trajectory of the progress that we would make either on making a net reduction in homelessness or unsheltered homelessness?
We are beginning that. We are working on that now with our partners in the Homelessness Response System, our data and evaluation team. We hope to have information that will guide those decisions leading into 27. There's a lot. We know that inflow is a major impact on our ability to reduce the number of folks experiencing homelessness in the community. So we need to think about the breadth of services that affect inflow and outflow to make sure we're producing a balanced system, so that analysis is ongoing.
Okay. And then what's the total part of this rebalance is essentially borrowing money from next year to rebalance this year? What is that amount?
Are you referring to drawing down of year 2 shelter funding? If so, it's $3 million.
It's essentially borrowing next year's money?
Correct. And we'll have about under $7 million left for year 2 for FY27.
I'm sorry, so it's $3 million?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to hear your answer, but I just want to make sure also that Commissioner Jones-Dickson on the Cook Plaza distribution of funds, whether you're comfortable with how that landed?
Yes.
Great.
I am, and we're looking forward to engaging in the conversation moving forward.
Great.
Thank you for asking.
Okay. The just general budget question that I had sent was there any sort of significant underspend or other places in the overall budget, since we have the answer from the Homeless Service Department that there aren't any other sort of flex that's available? I mean, just mid-year cuts and contracts are extremely difficult to implement in a way that actually makes rational sense. Go ahead and.
Thank you, Commissioner. So for the record, Christian Elkin, County Budget Director. I use she, her pronouns. One of the things that we've been working on for the last few years now, especially with the recommendations from the budget audit, and we were already in progress with the CFO's office, was creating that budget monitoring dashboard, and then from there working on kind of bigger looks at, so we would do a 6-month look at the county. And one of the reasons why we picked the 6-month look at the spending analysis is for a few reasons. I'm going to read what I wrote to Commissioner Brim Edwards just to make sure that I'm covering it all, and I think
it was excellent.
My email sounds smarter than I could do.
I didn't like the answer, but it was very responsive.
Excellent. So one of the things is that if you tried to just look at the county at Q1, there's some pretty, there's not a lot of data in there that can help us really forecast the trends, especially because we have a lot of community-based contracts those contracts are based on a 30-day reimbursement cycle, oftentimes going into the beginning of the fiscal year. Sometimes our providers are a month and a half behind on that. We know Department of County Human Services, Homeless Services Division, the Health Department, a significant portion of their budget is based on these community-based contracts. And so if I just took that data and started trying to forecast out from there, I would be missing significant amounts of payments that need to be made. So that's kind of where service delivery is outpacing expenditures at that stage in the budget. Even going into Q2, we're still seeing that catch up and that lag happening. A second factor is that we have a policy that I affectionately call spend other people's money first. Eric Ariano, our Chief Financial Officer, would tell you, spend the most restricted funding first and then the least restricted. So if we were just looking at trends by kind of funding sources, it would look like that we were significantly underspending the general fund if we're following this policy, and that wouldn't be the case. It would be that we're following our policies, and so that would also then, we would need that extra analysis to figure out how to spread that pace and that fund across all of the funding sources. And then also sometimes what happens is we spend the most restricted, and then it comes back and they say, that wasn't really allowable here, you need to move it here. And so we just need to give the programs time to get that spending in place so that we can do those kind of stronger analysis for all of you. The third, the area where it's more predictable, where we can do more, see more direct spending patterns kind of like right out of the gates, is kind of those long-standing programs that are run on personnel costs. So when we have programs that are almost primarily driven by personnel costs, a lot of this is in public safety and in general government, and their funding sources are pretty clean, and we don't have a lot of grants and a lot of those types of things. We can, those patterns are more predictable because payroll is more predictable. We know that it's run on cycles. But even right now, if you go onto our dashboard, we have a note on there that says we have open labor contracts, and that means that the COLA hasn't been bargained and the personnel costs haven't been bargained. So all the costs that we even have in our budget monitoring dashboard right now are too low, because all of that hasn't been implemented. So that was my kind of way to describe why doing Q1 or even and having to wait to Q2 makes more sense for the organization to evaluate. And I know departments in the meantime are still evaluating all of their work as they're going, because they have a much closer relationship with those programs, as Anna was talking about. And so we're kind of doing a both and at the same time. But that's why we wrote in the budget monitoring policy that spend at 6 months is when we'll start to do those analysis for the board. Thank you.
Thank you, and also appreciate the answers to the questions, including the ones right up until last night. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director Plum, for the presentation, and Antoinette as well. And Director Elkin, you might want to stay because I might have a budget question. Or you can run off, whichever. Just a couple questions. I know there's been presentations to the I guess the providers. There's like a conference or a meeting. Did you cover, or did we cover the county, just the changes and the things that we're facing? And did we receive any feedback during that time? And has that impacted or influenced what you presented as far as option A?
Great question. So for this fiscal year's change, I did go to, there's every Monday, some of the providers get together, and I've gone to that and kind of walked through the cut that we have to make in this fiscal year. We did just have one of our regular provider conferences where we bring together providers from across the continuum and have a variety of interactive workshops. We did have a work session there focused on the FY 2027 budget. The goal of that was to get provider input on how they want us to set our budget priorities and what we should prioritize going into FY 2027. In that presentation, we focused on sort of what I went over with you all at the very end of this presentation. What are we looking at as we move into 2027? We presented what our budget priorities were this fiscal year and asked for input on how those priorities might change. What was their input on those priorities? That was an interactive session. We collected all the notes. People had an ability to fill out a survey. We are going to fill out that survey more widely to our provider network very soon, so we can gather more information from our providers as we develop that 2027 budget, which we know is going to be a much more significant set of cuts.
Got it. So we didn't discuss the rebalance. We didn't talk about the rebalance exercise, what we're going through.
That was not the focus of the work session at the provider conference. I have discussed it with the executive director group that meets on Mondays, and we have sent out emails to our broad provider network trying to be transparent about where we were. So I think I've sent out 2 emails as we've walked through this process, maybe 3, saying here's where we are, here's the next steps, and inviting folks to come to me with their feedback.
Great. Thank you. And then I really appreciate the list of program offers as far as that will be impacted by the budget rebalance or the thing that you're proposing. Is it possible to list all the providers that are connected to those to the program offers? And if so, how much time would that take?
So almost a month ago maybe, we sent out an initial list of across the departments, the providers that might be impacted. Okay. What we can absolutely do is update that for you all once we sort of land and say, here's where we're looking. What I hear you all saying is you want to know the providers and the amounts, and we will absolutely follow up with that information.
I remember seeing that list because I thought it was only associated with the Department of Human Services, so thank you. So that answers that question. And then the other question that I have is just in regards to the $15 million carryover, the $15 million that we sent over to Mayor Wilson. I guess it's not directed to you, it's directed to the board. I think it's worth engaging the mayor's office and inviting them here to share about the overall impacts of the sheltering and how things are going. That's one of the questions that I asked as far as including the budget, and we decided not to do that, just because there's a lot of consternation, and we're getting feedback both from folks that are in that space. So I think we should do that in short order. And then also, I know we have the contingency funds. It seems like there's an emergency. This is an emergency. We're receiving a lot of feedback from community members and service providers around the concerns. And because we haven't received the update from Jillian yet, as far as the HRAP, it's a whole bunch of information. Would it be possible, should we be talking about using contingency to cover the $15 million whatever gap that's here and to move us forward up until the end of the fiscal year? That just came to mind based off of all the information that we are receiving this morning. So I guess that's a board question, not a you question. Thank you for the presentation. But seriously, it's
which contingency are you referring to?
Yeah, I think that we can talk a little bit about that. I will say we don't have enough contingency to backfill the $15 million.
Okay.
I also just want to, and I was going to share this in my comments, there was a statement from the co-chairs of the Ways and Means Committee in the legislature that they are looking at potentially $912 million in cuts as part of the work of the short session, which we also will likely feel the effects of here at Multnomah County. So I think that as we're having these conversations about these really hard cuts that we are having to take right now, this is not the end of those cuts. And so I think we really need to consider the totality of what we're going to be facing even before we get into FY27, just what more we might face in terms of cuts for FY26. Okay.
And then the final question directed to you all, just have we communicated to the service providers that might be receiving cuts due to the rebalance?
We have not yet done targeted communication to those, no. It's been broad to all providers where we are.
Great, thank you. And then Commissioner Singleton, if you can reshare your budget, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, so thank you so much. Thank you. And then we'll go to Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you. And I just sent this to y'all in your email so that I know sometimes it's easier to see it. So the motion that I'd like to make for this budget modification is a budget note that states, while HSD regularly monitors spend down, we're requesting that the department look at mid-year unspent resources and prioritize those dollars for housing placement out of shelter. Additionally, requesting a briefing providing an update to the board post-state budget rebalance implementation to understand where we are in regard to the following outcomes: housing placement off the streets, housing placement out of shelter, and a thorough review of the shelter assessment report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to add a budget note to this budget modification today. Any discussion on this? Commissioner, go ahead.
Can we add adding the city of Portland or the mayor coming to?
We can't do it at this point since it's on the table. However, I will give you my assurance that we will send that invitation and find some time for the mayor to invite the mayor to come and talk. So we'll do that.
Sorry, I just neglected to say I appreciate everyone's willingness to be flexible this morning. This came to me last night. very late. So I did send it to your inboxes so you have it. The department is aware. We've notified the deputy COO, as well as Director Elkin is aware. So done a lot of, just to make sure that Jenny Madcore is aware, and Tasia will get you the language if this passes.
I want to just speak to the proposed motion. I'm very supportive of this. I have been in a public institution, the school district, in a year in which there was a huge recession in the state. It's the 2002, 2003, where the state sent mid-year cuts through to school districts and a whole bunch of other people or entities, and making mid-year cuts they're way more challenging than ones that are made at the start of the that are known at the start of the fiscal year. Just staffing occurs, commitments are made, and so if there is a way that we can soften the landing or reduce the impact of mid-year cuts. Again, sometimes it's hard to make them rational when because you have so many fewer options when you're already partially through your spend. So I think this is a really important thing for us to try and do, given that it's now October and plans have been made. So I appreciate Commissioner Singleton bringing this forward.
I also want to appreciate you bringing this forward. I think this is good. I will say that I do think we may see more cuts from the state coming, and so I think we're going to get this look at where we are on things, and I think having that conversation of where the city is on some of their investments and what they're thinking about in terms of potential impacts will do part of this. So I do think for Commissioner Jones-Dixon's request is going to help accent what we're going to be looking at from the county side. So thank you for this. Commissioner Moyer?
Yeah, I appreciate the budget note. I feel like this touches a piece of an overall I am worried we're continuing to kick the can down the road where the road takes an unbelievable dive. And I feel like there needs to be some real conversation about what the future looks like, because I feel like I'm not sure this is the right mix for where we need to be going. And that's not on you guys, that's on us to really grapple with, in a new funding scenario, what the right balances are and what the right models are and what is working and what we need to find a different way to do. But I do support, I think this is important, at least beginning point to digging at some of that.
I completely agree, Commissioner, and I think we started some of that when we had the work sessions gearing up to 26. The challenge was I don't think we got to have them with the city of Portland, and that's been a bit of the missing link. I will share that I have been having those conversations. Commissioner Brim Edwards has joined me at a table with 3 city councilors to at least read them into that conversation we've had about shelter models, cost, effectiveness, outreach cost models and effectiveness, and some conversation about what are our roles and responsibilities. I think that we continue to get stuck in a back and forth and a bit of a struggle on what a right-sized system looks like, because there's some duplicative work going on. And I think it's really critical that we decide and really define what the county's role is, which to me is social services and homeless services, and the city's role is about public space management, which is not homeless services. We need to figure out a way for those systems to connect and so that human beings can traverse through the both of them. But right now, everybody's trying to do homeless services, and that's not what the intent of the initial, as somebody who worked on putting together the joint office, was not the intent of how that was set up. So it is where we are today, but I do think that, to your point, that's a critical conversation that we started as a county. We have not quite had that full discussion with the city, particularly the city councilors.
Can I add one thing to that? I will say that I think you and I have had lots of conversations about like what is the, like we each as governments have different roles and equally important areas of responsibilities that we have to be accountable for as these governments. I think the thing that for me, as we're having those conversations, it's also is making sure that we have those connection points. Whatever that system looks like, there has to be the connection there. And I think that's what I'm, as we're looking at some of these new investments that we've been talking about today, Oasis, some of these overnight beds, that we have to be having those conversations about the connections between the systems. Because again, that is the way that we are going to ultimately see the permanent outcomes that we want to see and the ultimate end of safety, stability, and housing for families and people who are living outside. So, okay. All right. Tasia, can we have a vote on the budget note?
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Vega Peterson?
Yes, the budget note is approved. Great. So now we'll go back to discussion on the underlying item. Is there, I know that some people had comments. Commissioner Brim Edwards, did you want to make your comments?
Sure. I want to reiterate my appreciation for staff of really sort of wrestling through this, of being asked to make adjustments in the fall once the fiscal year is already underway. So appreciate the good work and also like checking my math when I offered it. The county's known how much the state has historically funded homeless services in Multnomah County. And I am concerned about the narrative that that is a statement that the state has reduced funding, because I don't believe that's accurate. The county projected state funding on a proposed budget from the governor. And the reality is the Ways and Means co-chairs released their budget framework on March 19th, and the legislature adopted their budget and adjourned on June 27th. Those of us who've worked with the legislature, and I know there's many of us on the commission and also in this room, that the governor's budget is really a starting point. And it's replaced ultimately by the Ways and Means co-chair's budget and also then the legislative approved budget. So the shortfall was known pretty much at the end of June, and it wasn't a cut, it's just the starting point that the county used was not the actual starting point, really, for what the budget was. So while the shortfall was known at the end of June, we're making budget cuts 4 to 5 months later, and as I mentioned before, that puts those who are making reductions in a really difficult position, and oftentimes they're not the cuts that you would have made if you would have known in advance. I will also say I'm concerned that the county made commitments that it's not upholding. The county, moving forward, the county is not meeting the goal of moving people from shelter into permanent housing. The goal had been in the community sheltering strategy that's in the homeless response action plan of goal of placing 41% of people exiting shelter into housing, and we're at about half that goal. The county is also not meeting the community sheltering strategy goal of increasing 1,000 beds of shelter capacity by the end of the year. And as one of the commissioners who, on July 11th, approved, and myself included, it was quite contentious, the IGA and the Homeless Response Action Plan about the approval. I did vote for approval, and it did include these commitments around community sheltering, flow through, and how we are going to apply our resources. And again, I know not everybody at this table was, because the change in the commission was part of that, but I feel like there was a commitment from the commission when we approve those things, that we haven't revised either the intergovernmental agreement or the homeless response action plan to say those aren't our goals. And I'll also say that I'm concerned about borrowing from future budget years that just create a larger cliff potentially next year. I know this has been done in the past with other budgets. For example, with school budgets in 2003, wholesale, the legislature allowed essentially school districts to borrow the first months of next fiscal year's funding to pull it back into a current year's funding. So it's not unprecedented, but I will say it took some school districts 10 years to get themselves out of that, having an 11-month budget cycle and always being behind. So I'm concerned that we're borrowing from the future without really necessarily a plan of how we fill that hole. And I would just say, overall, I'm concerned that we don't have a comprehensive strategy or system that will lead to a reduction in homelessness and unsheltered homelessness. And feel that, and this has been a point that Commissioner Singleton has often raised, that we need a comprehensive strategy and system, and we know that we also are going to need to do it in partnership with not only the City of Portland, but the City of Gresham and the other cities in the county. And I feel like this vote today is a sort of, in somewhat, a reaction. And again, this is not a criticism. I think you all worked super hard to work with our providers and with the direction you were given, but it's not a comprehensive strategy or system, and I feel like it's just going to put us in a deeper hole.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I was reviewing my notes, and thank you, Commissioner Brim-Edwards, for your remarks, and the rest of my colleagues as well. I was just reviewing the list. Currently, as it stands, I'm not supportive of what's being presented based off of the level of engagement with the service providers, and seeing the overall impacts on District 3 and District 4 as far as the providers that would be impacted by what's being presented today. So that's just moving forward. I want to know if we can postpone this until next, maybe a week or two, so we can engage with the providers, and so my office and myself can have a better understanding of the overall impacts and what the other options are. So thank you. Those are my only remarks at this point, at this time.
Okay, so are you making a motion to table this?
I am making a motion to table.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so we have a
Thank you.
motion to table or postpone. Is it motion to, thank you, Jenny McCart. Motion to
Teamwork makes the
postpone.
dream work. Thank you.
Motion to postpone.
Either to a date certain or indefinitely.
To a date certain. I would.
Yes. So I would say as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So if we could do it for next week?
Can we talk about this for a second? It would be helpful to know what folks are looking for, because I do want to acknowledge the conundrum that does exist of having provider level conversations when you don't know what the board's reductions will be is difficult. And so what is the feedback particularly that we're looking for? Is it what I said earlier about thinking about that system level feedback from provider? I guess I want to understand so we can be really clear for them. And I will say, as a former provider, if the department came to me and said, we're going to reduce your budget, we don't know how much, and so we don't know the impact on you, there's not a lot that I would be able to engage with them on until they say, we have a $4 million reduction, or 4.5, or 2, or whatever the actual dollar amount is. Then them coming to me, I can start to say, this is what it means for me for staffing, or I have a vacancy here, so I won't fill that. I have this much client assistance, this is how much I could go. It's hard to get into the details until there's concrete numbers, but I want to acknowledge that I also think that it's been hard for providers to feel like they can give input on the system direction, right? What I heard today was we shouldn't reduce housing placement, we should reduce shelter. But I'm not hearing from any board members, I think we should close shelters instead of doing what these reductions in front of us in option A say. So that I'm not opposed to postponing, I just want to know that we're actually going to get something more to be able to make that vote.
Okay, and I think Commissioner Moyer was.
I was saying that, actually. I would be wanting to do that after the winter. I do think we are not balanced. I don't think $4 million reduction should just come from placement out of shelter. I think we need to look across the board at service providers. Not that that's easy, but I think that it's then less devastating. And then I need to understand where the city's going, because I don't feel like what they're doing makes our targets of housing out of shelter nearly impossible. And I'm not supportive of the $3 million from next year. But I just want to say, yes, I actually am saying potentially a reduction in shelter beds post-winter.
Is that a scenario that you all actually explored and looked at what those cost savings would be and what are options that we aren't stuck in a lease on for closing shelter?
We did not, simply for the reason that closing shelter in the winter felt like the wrong move in this time frame. Again, I think that discussion is different moving into fiscal year 2027 time, as well we should, on the $4 million cut that we're talking about taking to providers in this fiscal year. That's important, and we need to do that, and we also already are starting to talk about and need to continue to focus on the $63 million cut we have coming. I don't think we should be closing shelters in the winter. I do agree that we need to have a balance between shelter and housing placement, and I think that conversation changes in the next fiscal year when we have time to engage our providers on that larger system, to engage our jurisdictional partners like the city who have their own priorities, making sure that we can address their priorities and our priorities, make sure that we are giving ourselves the ability to get folks safe off the streets, but also get them into housing. My concern about a pause is that we are continuing the fiscal bind that we're in. A week is frankly not enough time to engage providers holistically, and even longer means that we still are not making the cuts that we need to make, and we are not asking people to pause placements that they might need to make to meet that cut. So I'm concerned about a further delay, just to be totally frank. I hear you. I do agree we're looking at a cliff. I think this step is really important to set us up to have those larger conversations for fiscal year 2027. We've already started those with the providers as of last week. We need to get a plan in place to engage with the city on a regular basis and the city of Gresham, other jurisdictions, about what are we going to do next year that meets everyone's needs, and we need all the time we can get to do that. So my perspective is this moment is important, and we need to get through this moment so we can focus on the much larger situation we have coming towards us. So that's my perspective. Totally hear what you're saying.
Chair, if I could just clarify briefly, part of what the budget note is intended to do is have that conversation post-shelter assessment to talk about what shelters may or may not need to close. Is there something that precludes us from giving direction to wind down shelters early when we have the report back briefing from that budget note?
No, I mean, we can take a look, and I will say, I don't believe that this is the last time that we are going to be having to open up the FY26 budget before the end of the fiscal year because of what we're expecting to happen in the short session. So I think there will be other opportunities that we'll have to take a look at the budget and what we want to do for the rest of this fiscal year.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in, my concern is like the $4 million with the provider piece and the lack of communication around the rebalance. Specifically, I've heard from providers, not only regarding this, but just them having to redo pretty much what Andy Miller said this morning in his public testimony. So that's my chief concern. But
yeah. So you're, just to clarify, the postponement would be just around that provider increment?
Yes.
versus
And
the,
that's for me personally, but
So
we just need to know what we're voting on.
So what I understood was that you were voting, you were moving to postpone the vote on all of on the budget modification as a whole, and so that to have more time. I think my question is, so we are spending dollars every day that we technically don't have because we are budgeting for things, and it's like nodding. So the further we postpone this, the bigger the hole that we dig for ourselves. And I don't know, and I feel like, so there is, to me, an urgency to make these changes and then to engage in those conversations with the providers so that there can be that conversation about what these impacts are going to look like, how can it be best managed to have the least impacts, knowing that ultimately, like, we're making these decisions because what we expected to get from the state was not what was actually received, and we were trying to adjust for that. And frankly, the state as a whole, not just for Multnomah County, but as the state, made significant changes from the governor's budget, specifically in housing placement and retention. And prevention, and those are where we saw the biggest hits. So we're trying to mitigate that here. But so I would say that that there is some urgency in trying to move this forward if we have the votes to do that, because every day that we are delaying this, we are digging a bigger hole.
Can I just have a clarification? Are we, so we have a motion on the table, are we?
So we
just, the motion maker was that it's just the provision, is that whatever, that's what everybody's understanding what we're voting? I just want to make sure that I know what we're voting on, the postponement.
Yeah, there is a motion on the table.
But it's not the whole package, it's the provider, just that 4 million?
I don't think we can, so there's the budget modification there's one budget modification that contains all of the things. So that is the thing that we are looking to postpone. It's the vote on the budget modification that contains all of it.
to next week.
So there's a motion on the table to postpone to a date certain of next week to consider this matter in its totality. And so we have a motion and a second. We've had some discussion. There can be additional discussion or a call for the vote on the motion to postpone to next week.
Can you all, I do want to know what will look different next week? What will you be able to give us, and what engagement might look like? I know that not every provider was able to show up for public testimony today, but this impacts more than what we've heard from. So how will you address this postponement?
Yeah, I think a week is a really difficult amount of time to engage a network of 60 to 70 plus providers. We would be able to potentially convene a conversation to review this, ask folks to review and give us their perspective. Given timelines of when we would have materials for you, I don't think you should expect significantly different materials. We might be able to have some providers come and give perspective, but I do not think there will be significant changes in direction in a week, unless I do not see us pivoting to closed shelter in the winter. I don't know the engagement would be necessarily super meaningful. My preference would be to move now, and not that you're asking, but I'm just going to say, since I'm up here, and then really focus on that intensive engagement with our providers as we lean into the much more difficult conversations building into 2027.
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm not sure this would be a meaningful, the timeline that we have is, I don't know that it would be meaningful at this point.
Got it. So I'll rescind my motion, and we can move forward with the vote of the initial. Thank you for that, Director.
I want to, sorry, go ahead.
So under our board rules, we have not previously recognized motions to rescind. We've had some discussion in this boardroom about that. So if the board would like me to lead you in an opportunity to discuss the motion to rescind and come to an agreement on whether or not you want to recognize that, I'm happy to do that now.
We can move to vote so we can move
But Robert's Rules of Orders allow a motion to be
To withdraw the motion.
Not after a second is made. At this point, I know. So this is, we can absolutely walk through this, and I think if with the chair's permission, I'd like the opportunity just to poll the board to see if there's any objection to Commissioner Jones-Dixon withdrawing his motion after the second has been made. If there is no objection, then I would advise the board that he should be permitted to withdraw his motion. Otherwise, if there is an objection, then we would vote on the motion as it had been proposed.
Okay. Is there any objection to Commissioner Jones-Dixon's move to rescind his motion?
Or withdraw.
Yes. Okay.
No.
Okay, so we see there's no objection by the board, and so we will recognize the motion to rescind.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we are back to the underlying budget modification.
I'm going to make it more complicated for you, Chair.
Great.
Commissioner, I would be open to, if you want to amend the budget note. I don't know if that's possible because we already voted on it. But if we want to add something more explicitly about engagement with providers prior to the department coming to them with how they want to implement reductions.
I would like to. If you can help me with the language, that'd be great. Yeah.
So we can't, we already have voted on the budget note, so at that point, that is part now of the budget modification, but I think to either Commissioner Moyer's point, we can ask the department to commit to it right now without a formal budget note and just make that commitment to the board, if that would work for you.
I would prefer to have it in writing, not to be complicated, but I trust that you will. So yes, I'm comfortable with communicating that. We're all on the same page, so yes.
But technically, you could just offer another budget note. I mean, if you want it.
We have auditors.
I know, we do. I know, we still. Okay. Okay.
I can say on the record, we will engage with providers.
Great. And if you could also plan to provide an update to the board on those conversations.
Yes,
Thank you.
will do.
Okay. Great. Okay, so now, any further discussion on the budget modification? All right. So Tasia, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Moyer?
No.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
No.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Vega-Peterson?
Yes, the budget modification is approved. All right, thank you so much.
The budget modification as amended.
The budget modification as amended with the budget note is approved. Thank you, Jenny Medcorp. All right, thank you. I want to invite the auditor to come up for the conversation. And auditor, thank you so much for your patience today as we work through some important and gnarly budget issues.
R5.
You being here.
R5, opportunity to align budget setting for the auditor with the county's values of accountability.
Great. And I know we have a presentation for this, so Auditor Grimmerk, again, thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Jennifer McGuirk, the Multnomah County Auditor, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm pleased to talk with you today about an opportunity to align how the county sets the auditor's budget with the county's value of accountability. In 2019, I started exploring how the county charter could be amended to reflect best practices for auditors' offices. Most recently, in 2024, I provided a memo to Chair Vega-Peterson containing a proposal for budget setting for the auditor's office, and I provided that memo to all of you this summer. I want to acknowledge how the context in which I embarked on that conversation with you has changed. While the federal administration's actions were bleak and frightening at the time, I did not imagine how things would unfold. I scheduled this presentation before safety net programs began rebalancing with you due to lost state and federal funding. I scheduled it before the USDA said it would not use contingency funds to continue funding the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. I scheduled it before the current legal battle about the Trump administration's desire to needlessly deploy federal troops in Portland. Trump's administration lies about what is happening in our communities and is unaccountable to the people. Next slide, please. Our county holds different values. We have a stated commitment to accountability, for example, but our value of accountability, along with our values of equity and inclusion and safety and well-being, to name just a couple, are under threat by our own federal government. And that threat makes my presentation, unfortunately, very timely, because it's important for us to figure out how we can safeguard our values. Given my role, I'm going to focus on how we can demonstrate our value of accountability in a way that is symbolic and also real, and that way to demonstrate our value of accountability is through improving the process we use to fund the auditor's office. Next slide, please. I want to give an overview of what I'll share with you today. I'll talk about our county's value of accountability, my office's work, our current budget process and its problems with respect to accountability work, and a proposed solution, and then we'll have time for discussion. Next slide, please. Last year, Multnomah County finalized its mission, vision, and values statements as the guiding principles that inform the decisions county leadership, departments, and offices make to foster a thriving community and workforce. Next slide. One of the values statements that the county adopted is about accountability. The values statement defines accountability as taking responsibility for delivering the services we say we will, and being transparent and communicative in what we do and how we do it. I was excited by this definition because it rightly gives all of us, at every level of the county government, responsibility for being accountable in our roles as public servants. Next slide, please. The Auditor's Office has a special role in promoting and ensuring government accountability. This is because my office is the only county office with a scope of work specifically focused on the accountability of all county operations and financial affairs. The county charter and county code make these assignments to my office. All of this work is about supporting the improvement of county government so that it better serves everyone who lives in our county. Next slide, please. Our mandated work includes independently examining county programs through performance audits, receiving and investigating complaints through the Good Government Hotline, and serving as an impartial resource through the county ombudsperson to help people resolve issues with our county government. Next slide. My office also has other duties that come from the charter and code, including appointing a salary commission each even year, preparing a commissioner district reapportionment plan every 10 years, and providing ongoing support for the board's audit committee, which is a liaison to you, to management, and to the external auditor for the external financial audits required under Oregon law. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit more about the core work that we do. Performance audits, the Good Government Hotline, and the ombudsperson are each an essential aspect of ensuring that we have an accountable county government. Performance audits provide systems-level accountability and are essential to systems improvement. We receive and investigate reports of fraud, waste, and abuse of position, such as conflicts of interest, through the Good Government Hotline. Tips through hotlines are the most effective fraud detection method. And through the hotline, we ensure government resources are used efficiently and ethically. Through the county ombudsperson, we offer an impartial resource who helps people resolve issues with county programs. The ombudsperson, who listens to people's complaints and concerns, strives to help the person and the county program find a path to resolution. Ombudspersons are essential to ensuring people are treated fairly by our county government. Next slide, please. Each of these functions uses technical and soft skills to serve the county. We analyze laws, data, interview themes, and strategic plans, for example, and we do so through a frame of trauma-informed practices, an equity lens that leads with race, active listening, and other soft skills. Often we provide service one-on-one to community members, either through work with the ombudsperson, through interviews for the hotlines and audits, or through general inquiries that we receive to our office email and phone. Serving the public and helping government do better are key reasons we do this work. Next slide. Every audit, special study, recommendation, assessment, or investigatory report we publish is a tool that the people of our county can use to understand their county government and advocate for its improvement. These reports are also tools for you as you govern the county to support work that is getting needed outcomes, craft policy that improves how our government works, and keep track of whether programs are implementing my office's recommendations. Next slide, please. My office's work benefits the people of Multnomah County in various ways. Here are a couple of specific examples of the benefits of audit work. We recommended changes to countywide budgeting and reporting that improve transparency. One result is that the Budget Office has rolled out a monthly budget monitoring dashboard that reports actual expenditures at the program offer level and shows how they compare to budgeted expenditures. And back in 2023, we elevated concerns about safety and security within the libraries. The library has implemented our recommendation to coordinate with the county security program to complete a workplace violence threat assessment and workplace violence prevention plan and communicate the results to all employees. This is one example of our office bringing important issues that impact residents and employees to the board's attention. Next slide, please. Benefits of the hotline's work often include financial impacts. In one case, we identified waste of about $525,000 due to inadequate oversight. Our investigation caught unallowable costs, and we notified management, who worked with the vendor to make corrections. The county ultimately recouped the costs. In another investigation, we uncovered employee abusive position totaling $10,000. Our investigation revealed that a county employee pressured a partner agency to provide financial benefits on behalf of the county employee's family. We worked with the DA's and Sheriff's Office on the case and provided information to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission and to county HR. Next slide, please. The benefits of the ombudsperson's work are felt by the individuals she helps and also contribute to system improvements. For example, a resident had been waiting for more than a year to find out if an offense had been cleared from their record. Their phone calls to several judges' chambers had not been returned. The ombudsperson learned that the reporter's case was on a judge's desk for signature. After checking online court records, the ombudsperson let the resident know that the offense was no longer visible, indicating that the court had expunged the record. And the ombudsperson investigated and published a report on ambulance response times in Multnomah County, focused on the county's role in the issue. One result of that report is that you now receive ambulance response time data. Next slide, please. It's important to everyone in our office that our work reflects community needs and concerns, like the ambulance report I just mentioned. We focus our community engagement efforts on learning about the experiences of those most impacted by county programs to ensure we're focusing our auditing and investigative resources appropriately. We also share with community members what we've learned and provide them with information they can use to help keep the county government accountable. And we share the results of our work with you as a resource in your governance. Next slide, please. We're also mindful that accountability without equity can reinforce inequitable systems, and that equity without a strong focus on accountability can become empty promises. In our work, we connect equity and accountability. Some recently completed audits, for example, have helped the county better understand how it's doing in addressing disparities. We see how Preschool for All is serving many families and a wide diversity of families. Our equity audit continued the work to understand the experiences of county employees and where improvements can be made. The Auditor's Office's work supports Multnomah County's mission to improve the well-being of those in our county through public service. Safeguarding this work against whatever may come will be to the benefit of the residents of the county and all of us who serve her. I hear from people in our county practically every day, from community members, including people who rely on county programs, to line staff, and even from board members, with gratitude for the impartial information my office provides to keep government accountable to the people. My team and I take seriously the opportunity we have to promote responsible government through truth-telling. And so today, I have the duty to explain how the process that the county has used to fund the auditor's office doesn't reflect the county's value of accountability, a value that I believe is heartfelt and real. Next slide, please. First, I'm going to take a step back and talk about how the current budget process works for the auditor's office. Each fall, the county's budget director provides me as auditor with the current service level budget for the upcoming fiscal year. It includes any projected increases in costs based on the current service level, as well as the amount to be cut to meet any constraint. Based on this information, I submit a proposed budget to the county chair. I meet with the chair to review my proposed budget, including having to make the case for any increases to that budget. The chair then decides how much of the auditor's proposed budget will be in their overall proposed budget for the county. This gives the chair budget power over the auditor's office because the chair is proposing what the county will provide to the auditor to carry out the office's mandated work, much of which is focused on auditing and investigating programs that report to the chair. Historically, there have been no changes to the auditor's budget after the chair proposes it. Next slide, please. Now that I've gone over how the process works, I'll get into why it's a problem. I want to be really clear about two things. One is that the problems are not related to individual people, but rather to roles in our organization. The other thing I want to be clear about is that the problem I'm about to describe is not related to me being an elected official. It is about the functions I oversee. The current process would be a problem even if I were an appointee. Again, this is about the county's countywide accountability functions. Next slide, please. There are two main problems with the current way the auditor's budget is proposed. First, there's an inherent conflict of interest between the roles of the chair and auditor. And second, the current process does not reflect best practices for funding an audit organization. Next slide, please. I'll talk a bit about the conflict of interest problem. My jurisdiction as county auditor is all county operations and financial affairs. The responsible elected officials for carrying out these operations are the chair, sheriff, and district attorney. The sheriff and DA do not have budget power over the auditor's office. Next slide, please. But the chair does have budget power over the auditor's office. The chair oversees most of the programs the auditor can audit and investigate. And that's a conflict of interest given that the auditor's job is to assess and often criticize operations that report to the chair. Next slide, please. The other problem with the budget process is that it is not aligned with best practices for how to fund an audit organization. According to generally accepted government auditing standards, the World Bank's Index of Independence of Audit Institutions, the Association of Local Government Auditors, and the Association of Inspectors General, decisions about funding for the audit organization should not be controlled by managers or officials subject to audit. Next slide, please. You have an opportunity to implement a budget process for the auditor's office that is free of the current conflict of interest, is aligned with international best practices, and clearly demonstrates your commitment to accountable government. This mechanism is a set allocation. Next slide, please. An allocation funding approach is a proven practice that multiple jurisdictions use that have budgets that are as complex or more complex than Multnomah County's. This summer, my office spoke with accountability leaders for the city and county of San Francisco, California, New Orleans, Louisiana, and Chicago, Illinois about the allocations they receive. We also talked with the Inspector General's office for Cook County, Illinois, which is in the process of developing its allocation. Next slide, please. In discussing their budgets with us, these offices echoed issues about budget processes that do not involve an allocation. Without a set allocation, what we see is that a jurisdiction's accountability office does not grow as the jurisdiction's budget and responsibilities grow. This diminishes the office's ability to assess programs and provide the accountability that the jurisdiction and its people expect. Next slide, please. Having a set allocation also protects auditors' offices from future boards and chairs whose approach to accountability is more like what we're seeing at the federal level. I'm not speaking in hyperbole when I say there are administrations that will do all they can to reduce the power of auditors, ombudspersons, and inspectors general. For example, right before the federal government shutdown, there were efforts in Congress to cut the budget of the Government Accountability Office because the GAO has maintained fidelity to its mission. The GAO works for Congress, yet it is not safe from the current political environment because of how it's funded. This is not a situation limited to our federal auditors, however. In fact, the Association of Local Government Auditors has an advocacy committee that helps local government auditors under threat because this is such a common problem. Last year, that advocacy committee worked with 20 jurisdictions on issues including preserving independent audit functions and strengthening audit independence. The accountability professionals with whom my office spoke with affirmed that funding auditors' offices through a set allocation insulates that office from the political whims I just described. It's a critical way to ensure the accountability work will be ongoing, regardless of who is in governance roles. Next slide, please. Actually, can you go back? I got ahead of myself. Oh, no, I didn't. Sorry. Can you? Thank you. The offices we spoke with also advised that we propose an allocation that makes sense and is easy to calculate. Based on their advice and on feedback we received from commissioners through discussions with the Budget Office and my Community Advisory Committee, I'm proposing that the Auditor's Office be funded annually through a set percentage of the general fund expenditure budget. Next slide, please. Using the general fund expenditures budget as the base keeps the budget for the Auditor's Office aligned with funds that are under the board's control. It also means that the base for the Auditor's budget would reflect any increase or decrease in the current environment experienced at the department level. Next slide, please. While I'm proposing to change the mechanism by which the Auditor's Office is funded, there are many things I'm proposing we would keep the same. We would continue to fund the Auditor's Office through the general fund. The budget for my office will continue to reflect general fund constraints. I would continue to present my proposed budget to you each year and to the non-departmental budget advisory committee at their request. And the Auditor's Office would continue to return any unused funds to the general fund at fiscal year end. If we can agree that safeguarding the existence of the County Auditor's Office is in our best interest, I urge you to adopt an ordinance that sets the annual budget for the Auditor's Office at a set allocation of the general fund expenditures budget. Next slide, please. But then the question is, what should that allocation be? Well, here's where we are right now. For this current fiscal year, the Auditor's Office's budget is equal to 0.45% of the general fund expenditures budget. The office is under-resourced at this level. We know this because of how similar offices are staffed. Next slide, please. This is my office's organizational chart. We have 10 staff auditors, 1 person for the hotline, 2 for the ombudsperson function, and 1 person who does community engagement, constituent relations, communications, and DEI work. In 2024, my office researched staffing of other local government auditors' offices that are considered large shops like ours by the Association of Local Government Auditors. Large shops have between 11 to 15 auditors, including the head of the office. We focused on counties or combined city-counties with total annual budgets of between $2 billion and $4 billion. I wanted to find out if these offices had staff in addition to their audit staff. Next slide, please. Through this research, we learned that these other auditors' offices for jurisdictions of our size have an average total staffing of 15, and these offices are focused on conducting audits. They do not have public hotlines or ombudspersons like ours. In contrast, we have 10 people focused on audits. Next slide, please. We also looked at jurisdictions that are considered the gold standard in terms of their hotlines. This is Austin, Texas, and San Francisco. Both have audit and hotline investigatory functions. Austin has 6 staff for the hotline, and San Francisco has 7. These investigators are focused on work like our Good Government Hotline, fraud, waste, and abusive position. My office has 1 person dedicated to this. Similarly, we examined how local governments staff their ombudsperson functions. Among local government ombudspersons, the range was from 3 to 8 staff. For example, the auditor for the city of Portland has 3 staff in their ombudsman's office, and King County, Washington has 8 staff. My office has 2, an ombudsperson and an intake specialist who supports the work. Next slide, please. If the auditor's office were right-sized to meet county charter and code mandates, our staffing could look like this. We would have 15 auditors like our counterparts, 3 hotline staff, 3 ombudsperson staff, dedicated data analysts, as well as dedicated staff for communications and for DEI integration and community engagement. Just as a reminder, because of the independence standards my office has to adhere to, we can't use communications or community engagement staff who report to the chair. Next slide, please. So a policy consideration for all of you is, if you want to provide an allocation, what allocation to provide. As a reminder, this year my office's budget is equivalent to 0.45% of the general fund expenditures budget. My office is also significantly under-resourced at this level. An annual allocation of 0.75% of the general fund expenditures budget would right-size the office. Of course, as county auditor, that's the level I would advocate, but I understand the constraints we're facing and would support an approach that might ramp up to that if we're in a different financial situation, perhaps over a period of 5 years. Next slide, please. Regardless of the dollar amount, what matters is that the mechanism for funding the auditor's office is free from the current conflict of interest. While the 0.75% level would be ideal and best for the county's accountability office, I understand that given the current budget environment, that might not be feasible. I would like to work with you on how to implement the mechanism. Next slide, please. In closing, I want to thank you for considering this opportunity to safeguard the auditor's office. If you set an allocation for the office, you will be implementing a budget process that is free of the current conflict of interest, is aligned with international best standards, best practices for budgeting for auditors' offices, and clearly demonstrates your commitment to accountable government. In so doing, you'll be ensuring that your offices, your constituents, and everyone who works for and lives in Multnomah County will continue to benefit from an office that is here to promote accountable, equitable county government and that shares the county's commitment to government that takes responsibility for delivering the services we say we will and is transparent and communicative in what we do and how we do it. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Auditor. Again, appreciate you staying later so we could get through all our agenda today. I'm going to go to the board for any questions, and we'll start with Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your work and this presentation. I know you and I have had some opportunity to have some at least email back and forth and some conversations around this. I think one thing I will say is for me, it's missing what the board's role actually is in here. The board decides on the budget, so I'm not sure I'm totally behind the conflict of interest, but I am totally behind best practices and what makes sense to really fund this work. So I'm curious, I know you mentioned King County and City of Portland, but I'd love to see, and we can do this in follow-up when we meet or if there's materials, I'd love to see like-sized counties and what those structures look like, how many FTE, and what their allocations look like. And then would love to just talk through with you more. Are there other models that are best practice that aren't at this allocation base that you're doing, and just kind of understand why you got to this one if there's other options?
Thank you. I have a lot of that information ready and can certainly provide it. Just want to point out, I mentioned the City of Portland and King County in terms of their ombudsperson functions. They are not comparable when it comes to this. The only other model that I've seen is language in charters that say you'll have to provide sufficient funding to the auditor, and then that argument becomes, what is sufficient? What does that mean? So, you know, talking to organizations going back as long ago as 2016, the common response was, really the only thing that provides us independence is if we have a set allocation, because then we don't have to worry about the organization executive coming in and trying to arbitrarily cut our budget. I get what you're saying about the board's role. The board's role really is adopting the entire budget, but what gets before you for my office is shaped by one of the people who oversees almost everything that I look at. And that is, there's a tension there that would not be present if it was solely the board setting the budget for my office, which is what this would do. It would put it in the board's control.
I appreciate that piece. I will say I start my budget review process with what's been proposed, not with what the chair proposes, but the departments. So I do think it's important that we look at what you've actually put forward and not just what the chair proposes. So for me, I definitely, if there's things that are reductions that don't make sense, I will always bring that back to you to talk through. And I appreciate, again, on the best practice side of things, of really having this conversation and moving that work forward. So definitely I know you and I have a check-in coming soon, so I'll love to kind of dig into some of this with you and see if we can just keep moving the conversation forward.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brim-Edwards.
Sure. Thank you for bringing this forward and also raising it last year. This is one of the things when I got on the commission, it really surprised me that all the independent elected officials, not just the auditing office, had this sort of process where they were asked to take constraints or not to actually to propose something not based on what their work was, and they all, the auditor, the DA, and the sheriff all have sort of core services to the county, and so it was, I felt not really aligned with what I felt would be best practices to have the independent electeds, even though they are part of the county budget process, to have it being dictated like a constraint versus being able to provide, and I think this goes to Commissioner Singleton, of being able to put forward what they believe is necessary to perform the duties that they've been elected to do. So that's just a general statement. I really appreciate this being brought forward. I'm interested in pursuing it as if it's an ordinance change, and I do think it requires probably more greater discussion as to what's an allocation would be sufficient. Another surprising thing for me is that the constraint usually isn't across the board. So which the statement you had of the funding, general fund going up and down depending on the constraint, it was surprising to me that like some offices don't and departments don't have constraints, or their constraints is smaller based on set of circumstances. So it would, I think, further discussion needed on like what that would mean in a year in which there were constraints. And the reason the reason I think we should advance this conversation is, as a commissioner, I really rely on the auditor and the audits that are performed as a tool to improve county operations and our systems, to more effectively spend our sort of really limited resources. And the reason why I really rely on that information is because of the independence of the auditor, and also their reliance on a set of standards, on a set of really producing evidence. In all my work with governmental auditors, sort of their reliance on evidence to either, demonstrate a point or where something should change, or where there's a gap or an issue in governmental spending. It's not based on sort of politics or sort of wishful thinking or a particular presentation, but really based on what does the evidence show. So for me, as individual commission offices just having limited staff, for me it's the audits that come from the auditor are really an important tool. And again, not as a gotcha mechanism, but really to how do we most effectively utilize our county resources, deliver on our mission as a county. So I'm looking forward to discussion and would be supportive of a change in ordinance.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chair, and ditto to everything that's been shared so far, and hello to the rest of the auditors team. Thank you for being here this afternoon and waiting for us. I'm a couple comments in support of just the thing that I like about what you presented is just a guaranteed independence. I know that at times we're all human beings. The whole self-censorship, could potentially happen. Not to say that it is. Chair, I believe you're doing an amazing job. So that could happen. So I just think about the natural behavior. I want to just as it pertains to the auditor's work, one of the things that we talk a lot about is just representation in the district. Are there opportunities for positions? Let's say we do move forward with something like this for folks within the auditor's office to be district specific as far as being that the liaison?
That's a great question. I would have to say that will probably be up to the next auditor, as I, have a year and like a month or 2 months left. We do really try to look countywide in the majority of audits that we conduct. But that's a really interesting idea and something I'd love to talk further about and also talk to my office about. And just seeing what that would look like. I'm not sure. Let's talk further.
Okay. Got it. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was my only question.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Moyer, any?
Yeah. I too am receptive to wanting as much independence as possible for the auditor's office. And I do think the auditor's office is currently under-resourced. I'm not sure in the near term to the degree that that can be addressed. And I am interested in, what is the right mechanism where it's free from as much political influence as possible, but it still has to be part of an overall budget process. I'm still trying to think through how that would look, and I kind of would love, again, as Commissioner Singleton was saying, how do other jurisdictions operationalize it, procedurally, just so that I can kind of get a sense of how that would fit into an overall budget process, how other jurisdictions have handled budget reduction years, things like that. So as to still be responsive to a budget situation, but also maximize that independence.
Thank you. We have a lot of that and can get it into a package for all of you.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Auditor. I know that this is something that you have been working on for a while and bringing forward to different boards, including, I think it was something that was originally considered by the Charter Committee at one point. And I know we have had lots of conversations. I appreciate Commissioner Singleton's pointing out that it's ultimately the board itself that approves the entire budget and can make changes through that process too. You and I had mentioned that to you in terms of that. I mean, I will say, it is, there's been some comment about, the roles of different elected officials and how those budgets are. One of the things that I am legally obligated to do according to our charter is to prepare county budgets for submission to the board. That's for the entire county. And so as it stands now, the auditor is a part of that. So I think, so I really do appreciate you thinking about different ways that we could do this. I know that there have been increases in your office over the years, and we have talked about how we can get more permanent staff and adding positions and not having, for instance, constrained supply, and we've tried to do that as we've been facing deficits. But I think that there is some room here that we could talk about what this looks like, and I just really wanted to appreciate your acknowledgement of the situation we're under, both fiscal, but also, kind of political from the federal standpoint and that, and recognizing the context in which we're having this conversation.
Thank you. I just want to share some context. The last time we had any addition in staff was for fiscal year 2023, other than the creation of the ombudsperson and the needs to resource that. Before then, there had not been any increase to the staff in the auditor's office since the late 1990s. So that's a really long period of time when the county had grown tremendously. I asked for 9 additional FTE for fiscal year 2023, and I got 4. At the same time, I was trying to bring forth a measure, as the chair alluded, to the Charter Review Committee about setting an allocation for the office. I think, I have no way to prove this, but my personal opinion is that the only reason I got any staff that year was largely because I was also trying to bring something before the Charter Review Committee. And so I don't want it to have, I don't want any future auditor to have to go at it like that. I would like to be able to have the next auditor not have to present a budget to someone who responds to the majority of reports that my office produces. And I don't think, being in your roles, you can quite understand sort of the level of anxiety that I experience every time we issue a report, because I don't know if it's going to be used against us. And again, that's not about any particular chair, it's just about the nature of the system we have. And so this is really about putting things in a better position for the next person who sits in my seat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. All right, so that takes us to the end of our board meeting. We are over time. Are there any final announcements? I had an announcement that I wanted to share just regarding our special meeting tomorrow morning. To make sure that the public was aware that the Board of County Commissioners is providing notice of a special meeting of the board for tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. That will take place in the Multnomah building right here, and there will also be a virtual option to join as well. And this is to discuss federal impacts, including but not limited to the impending impacts on federal supplemental nutritional assistance program recipients. And the special meeting may also include potential action on a resolution directing county action. So I wanted to make sure that has been publicly noticed, everybody was aware that that has gone out.
Yeah, so thank you. I have 2 items related to that. One, thank you for announcing the meeting that Commissioner Moyer and I discussed it yesterday, and the sort of lack of full commission discussion when all of us have been working on this. I know that we all are very concerned about the potential change in and the reduction and elimination, at least temporarily, of SNAP benefits to our constituents. It's really important. So we decided that instead of having the county just relying on staff action, that we needed to call a special meeting. So again, I appreciate my colleagues putting that forward and noticing it this morning. The second thing is, and Commissioner Singleton, you may want to expand on this, but yesterday Commissioner Singleton and I sent a memo to the chair about the county's response and our belief that both in the short term and the midterm, we need to have a much more robust response, and the county has a role to play. This is also leading off conversations also with Commissioner Moyer about ideas that she has. So I really look forward to having a robust discussion and listening to all the places. I know Commissioner Jones-Dixon also has put some ideas on the table of us having a conversation about how we maximize the work that we all are doing with community organizations, other jurisdictional partners in response to this. So again, appreciate my colleagues' efforts to not just say words, but also to be ready to take action on behalf of our community.
Thank you. Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you. I wanted to, because we'll have proclamations before, and people might be expecting this, I just wanted to share that my staff and I have been engaging in conversations with employee resource groups, and particularly reached out to PRISM and QTPOC to talk about what they wanted to do for Trans Day of Remembrance. And through conversations with them, it was clear that a proclamation at this time would mean very little. Many expressed that there were some language that was included around WESP, supportive supervision, holding accountability around misgendering and microaggressions, and there's some sense that that's not being totally fulfilled. And so instead of having a proclamation, there was the request to have a gathering with community and have space to spend time together honoring trans individuals who are no longer here. So I wanted to just say that we've respected their wishes to not bring forward a proclamation this year, but I do think there's work to do and make sure that we get some accountability on the misgendering has been going on since I was an interim director almost 3 years ago, and that's too long. So there is some work I think we need to do around accountability. So Commissioner Moyer and I will likely bring something forward to address that need.
Right. Thank you. Any other comments? All right, one thing I did want to, so I appreciate the ability to have that conversation tomorrow. I want, there will be a memo going out a little bit later today to all of you talking about what the county's emergency response to the federal impacts that have been in total, just to make sure that that's clear for everybody. And then I wanted to share this as a budget modification to consider for next week, which is appropriating $100,000 of one-time only dollars to support food response in our community. And so I want to have this also as something that we can potentially discuss tomorrow about the different ways that we're able to show up. What I really am trying to do with this, and I think there was some discussion of this earlier this week with your offices through Stacy, but it's really to use this hopefully to help seed some other jurisdictional partners, both public and private, to also pitch in for this response. And I think one of the things that I'm interested in is seeing how we can use this, these dollars to deal with the SNAP response, but also look at the ways that we can be flexible and responsive to some of the other needs that we're hearing from community. I had the opportunity to meet with 2 different provider groups last week. And we talked about some of it was the initial FY27 budget conversations that I'm starting up, but also a lot of the conversation was exactly what's happening in our community today and the urgency, the need for flexibility around that, and just the response that people need in terms of how we can show up for people in the best way. So I'm looking forward to the conversation this morning, but wanted to share this with you to take a look at this and have this be as something that we can discuss.
You're going to be sharing with the contents and where that money is, what allocation that's coming from?
Yes, it's right now it's a contingency request. Okay, so I'll share this all with you, and then there'll be a copy for Tasia and Jenny that my office will make sure you guys have too. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. That concludes our regular business for today. There being no further discussion, we are adjourned.